Hey up and welcome to the Temple of Blair. This is a conversation with Ro Kohli. Ro's resume is pretty illustrious, ranging from stints at Roadrunner Records, Century Media, Warner Records, you name it, he's done it. Obviously, in relation to Roadrunner Records, my point of interest was Ro's input into the street team culture, which I was kind of born into in my experience in the UK. You couldn't fucking move without seeing a Roadrunner street teamer. So we go into that stuff. Ro's current venture is with War Machine Customs. Now, I don't want to short sell War Machine because really they do everything. They say it the best in their About Us section on the website, which is, if business is war, we have your best ammunition. So there's a range of things that Ro does, including like backdrops for bands, promotional materials. One of the things that they specialize in is customized action figures. We go into all this stuff, but I want you to check out the link in the description. We start off by talking about War Machine, then we talk about Star Wars, then we talk about Roadrunner. So for the first time in this podcast, I'm actually going to recommend you skip to 45 minutes if you want to just get straight into the Roadrunner stuff. However, you'll be doing me, you'll be doing Ro, and you'll be doing everyone else in the world a disservice if you were to skip over the War Machine stuff, because it is compelling. It's a long one, I'll give it that, but this is what happens if you vibe with someone, man. Metal, Star Wars, and Roadrunner, this guy's got it fucking all for me. But yeah, stick around to the end for this one, because there's a load of good fucking stories. Thanks very much to Ro. One, do fuck shit up. When I was doing my research, which was just the X-Man podcast, and there's much materials on you I could find. And when I was reading emails, I was like, you know what? This is gonna be. You clearly understand the reverence for the label. This should be like a walk in the park. Just understanding the gravitas from your perspective should be really interesting. But you know how this is interesting how this came about, because Corey Taylor did an interview with Steve-O and he talks about the label getting eaten up by Warner, and that was posted on Ultimate Guitar, and someone left a comment saying, dude, I was part of the street team, all these stories, blah, 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 blah. Maybe I should do a video about it one day. And I reached out to the dude, and he hadn't come back to me, but it did make me think, street team. Why do I feel like I should be acting on that? And then I looked at my first notepad that I did for this project back like last year before I even started. And your name was in here because I'd listened to that episode. And I was like, the street team stuff is critically important to, like, especially the UK experience, because I guess it's a smaller island. There's a lot, all the activities are a lot more concentrated, but I feel like it felt like it had Roadrunner had much more of a potent presence in the UK as a result of it. And obviously I know you're not the UK street team, but I'm interested in how the idea came about for the label and all that stuff. But I wanted to talk about like pluggables and interesting stuff up top. So can we talk about War Machine for a very brief moment?
Sure.
What did you do for Weezer?
What did we do for Weezer? We did their backdrop.
Right.
And we did their backdrop for one of their tours, and we did something else. Shoot, and it's totally escaping me what it was. It was a while back though. But yeah, I remember we definitely did their backdrop, which was huge. It was like 20 foot by 30 foot. It was for their festivals. It was a massively huge backdrop. But I know we did some merch. I feel like we did keychains. It was funny. I was just talking to my wife about how, like, I'm like, we really need to call together like all of our sample photos, because it's just been, the past 11, 12 years of just gathering photos and posting them online randomly and everything. And now I'm like, we don't have like a catalog of everything we've made. And as I've been thinking about it the last couple, I don't know, maybe a week or two, I was like, quantity wise over the last, I'm like, we've made like 3 million items. Mm-hmm. Like, like between, just companies that need 150,000 of this or 10,000 of that or 18,000 of this, like we've done so many things that I was just like, oh my God, like now it's like everywhere I look, there's like a bin that says Roadrunner or the War Machine promo on it. I'm like, I open it up. I'm like, oh, right. We did stuff for Black Veil Brides. I totally forgot about that. We did stuff for Sheryl Crow. And like, I mean, it's so bizarre. Tons of Queens of the Stone Age stuff, and we've done stuff for Foo Fighters, and it's just the more I look at it, the more I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about that.
It's interesting because, like, from a sort of consumer perspective, you look at the site and you go, okay, like bespoke items, okay, trade show, blah, blah, but you don't understand the sheer gravity until you look at the client list and you go, all right, this guy ain't fucking about. There's not only is it really prolific, but it's also extremely extensive.
Right. And really diverse, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I always tell people, yeah, we deal with everybody from death metal to Disney. And that pretty much kind of nails it. It's like at that point you can't, you know, you're like, okay, I get it. Like that's it, you know. Like I think those are pretty much the two extremes that we can, you know. So we'll do stuff for a death metal band, but we've done stuff for churches, you know, like, you know, whatever. You know,
are the action figures still the big seller?
They're not a huge seller. They're my favorite seller because it's kind of weird. In a really weird kind of backwards kind of way. War Machine allows me to do the action figures, you know? So it's like we can, because the action figures is my favorite part of this company. And I love the fact that, you know, yes, sometimes I have to make stuff, not that I never mind making anything for anybody. I mean, nobody comes up to me and is like, hey, can you make me swastika, you know, stickers? You know, nobody comes up to me for stuff like that. So, you know, I never mind making anything for anybody. Whether it's pens or keychains or whatever, but the fact that it allows me the opportunity to do these custom action figures for people, it's almost like for every whatever, you know, 50 clients, you know, I get 10 action figures to do. I'm like, worth it. All right, that's cool. It's not, I would love for it to blow up and be a tremendously huge thing. But for now it's, you know, it's one of those things too, where even if you're in the industry, if you're, when I say in the industry, like, have you been to comic book conventions? I don't know.
Oh, dude.
Okay.
We'll get on to Star Wars.
Yeah, no, for sure. But Star Wars is a perfect example. So we have a booth at San Diego Comic-Con every year. And obviously cosplayers, you know, Uber fans, super fans, all of that stuff. And they'll just walk by my booth. Even though I have huge banners that say, make yourself into an action figure, they'll just walk right by. And I always have to bring these people in because to regular people, the idea of a custom action figure is not even on their radar whatsoever. It's not even like their top 500 of anything they can possibly do. So it's like when people are like, I can't believe it's not a bigger thing. It's like, yeah, but that's because people have no idea this even exists. Until I really kind of bring them in, or sometimes they just happen to go, oh, okay, like let me just look online and I'll see what's what, and they might discover me. But it's like, but action figure, you know, custom action figures, it's not something even cosplayers think is even remotely possible for them. I mean, we've done stuff for the 501st, we've done a ton of stuff for them, but you know, and it's like we've done custom action figures of people in the 501st, and they'll show it to their other friends in the 501st and they're like, no way. And I'm like, really? You don't think that this is possible? Like, how do you not think this is possible? You know, so it's just a really weird dynamic in that regard. So it's not like our biggest seller, but it's by far the friggin' most fun thing ever. Can I curse on here? Can I swear? Is that okay?
Yeah. Okay. Everything, the C word gets bleeps out. Everything else is fair game.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, no, it's really fun, and you know, we've done it I've done it for friends, for gifts and stuff like that, and like I have a buddy who he helps us out at Comic-Con, and he helps me out for free, and it's 5 days of extensive selling and just lifting and God, it's insane, and but he's always like, no, I'm just happy to be here, but he cosplays as a samurai stormtrooper. Nice. And so when my friends kind of show up and they help out, and I'm so thankful for that I always give them a custom action figure of themselves. So he had no idea he was getting one, and to him he was like, I would have done this for free. Like, this is like the greatest thing in the world, you know. But even still, it's just as much as I really want it to be a massive thing, it still hasn't quite caught on. But it's also very much a time and place thing, you know. Like if I hand somebody a postcard about it, you know, I can't be like, okay, I'll hear from you later today, correct? You know, it's like it's very much a time or a place thing, you know. Like I want to get it for my dad's birthday, or I want to get it for my mom for Mother's Day, or you know, they have to plan it around something. It's very rarely just like, I have $300 burning a hole in my pocket. You know what? You know, custom action figure. You know, it's not really where people's heads go, but I do love it when people see it and I can show them. Actually, I have one right here, where I can show them, you know, show it to them in person, show them how they look, show them how they move. I don't know if you can see this guy right there, and underneath it is my stupid head. So yeah, so my buddy, and he made this for me without me even realizing it. But yeah, it's like I have my own guns, and the guns go in the back, and they come off, and we're all about accessories, and and when people see that, they're just so blown away by it, and that's what I love. And even if we don't hear from people, I'm just happy that we kind of just make that impression, and that people are really just so blown away that it's even a possibility now in their life to be an action figure. And the way I look at it too is that, like, let's say, I don't know, I would imagine you're a soccer fan, but I can't tell. I don't know. I assume every Briton is is a soccer fan. But but in other words, like, I'm not a sports fan at all. But if you were a Manchester United fan or a Liverpool fan or something like that, or even like a Dodgers fan or a Lakers fan, whatever, it's like, we want to be able, like, you could be a Lakers fan and be a Star Wars fan, or a G.I. Joe fan, or a Marvel fan. So I never want to take away people's, like, devalue people's passion because it's not something I'm into, So if you want to be a Lakers stormtrooper, I will make you into a fucking Lakers stormtrooper, and we actually have made that before. But it's like, what I'd say is we take people's passion and we literally give it physical form, So like the figure I just showed you, it's like, it's me as a Sith Lord, but I'm also a huge Kiss fan. So it's like, I actually have like Kiss makeup right there. And there's like a Gene Simmons tongue right there. It's like, and I call my guy up and I'm like, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, well, this is all the stuff you're into. And I was like, yeah, you pretty much nailed it.
I think that is you hit the problem on the head, which is, it would never occur to anyone that it is possible at this point. I guess it's still like the technological side of things is kind of, I wouldn't say it's emerging because you're doing it, but for it to enter the zeitgeist as something that's doable, you got to remember that they put wheels on suitcases after the moon landing. So these things take
totally right.
Yeah, these things take differently. So
no, totally, and that's exactly it. And not only that, but it's like people also have a very so word I'm looking for, inflated idea of what 3D printing is capable of. So to them, they're like, oh, you just 3D print them. And I'm like, no, you can't 3D print an action figure that has articulation. Like, that's not how it works. And in people's heads, they're like, oh, just take this guy, put him in some weird microwave looking thing, hit times 10, and then 10 pop out. What's the problem? And that's really where people think that it is. And when I tell them, like, no, it's all done by hand. There's no 3D printing whatsoever, no molds, no casting, no any of that. And they're just like, but why not just 3D print it? And I'm like, because it's not the Jetsons. We're not there yet. This isn't the Transformers. Like, I don't have that ability to do this stuff, so that's the other part of it, is really managing people's expectations and their assumptions on what is possible and what is not, and then sometimes people are like, well, I don't like any of this stuff. And I'm like, well, that's fine. We could just do you on a normal day. You could just have jeans and a t-shirt on and we'll make you an action figure like that. So you don't have to be a character. And then also just the same, like, well, what are you into? What's are you a big G.I. Joe fan, Star Wars, Harry Potter? I don't know.
Star Wars, but I've not watched anything for 6 months since I started this Roadrunner thing. It's actually kind of questioned what I like.
Right.
But yeah, massive Star Wars dude.
Okay, so it's so when it comes to doing this, it's like people, like, let's just say there's a character in Star Wars that, maybe from a video game or from a comic book that never had an action figure. We can make that also. So it's like you can have an action figure that is just unique for you. Like, that's it. It is your figure. That's what I love telling people when we make figures of them. I'm like, you're literally the only person in the world that has this.
It's so bespoke. It's borderline heirloom.
Yeah. No, it totally is. And even if you do one of yourself, it's not like anyone can, like, call it. Nobody can be like, oh, I get his action figure of himself. Like, nobody can steal it. Nobody can claim it as theirs. Like, it is yours. Like, if you saw a figure like that, like with the mohawk, you'd probably be like, somebody stole that from Ro. Like, he would not just willingly give that up for something, and that's kind of it. It makes it uniquely yours. And especially when you go to conventions and you go to, Funko and all these things, and everybody and their mother has exclusives. And then you realize just how diluted the term exclusive really is. How is it exclusive if there's 50,000 of them? Like, that's not really exclusive, And so so I always tell people, like, what's more exclusive than one of one? Literally the only one that's out there, and you have it. So we've done that for a lot of people, where they'll just be like, I had a guy not too long ago. He wanted to make a obscure Marvel character, and named what's his name? No, not Thomas. Shit, now I can't think of it. But anyway, he ends up becoming like the new Red Hulk or something like that.
Right.
And some super smart dude, like smarter than Tony Stark and all these kinds of things. But the dude didn't want him as the Hulk. He wanted him as the little Asian dude, like his little like alter ego. And I was like, yeah, nobody's really gonna probably end up making that, so why not? So that's kind of the cool thing. So it doesn't have to be a person that or you. It can just be a character in a TV show or a movie that's just never had an action figure, and you can do that. Or you could just make up your own. I want to have a Green Lantern Stormtrooper. Okay, I'm like, sure, why not? We'll do it. So that's what makes it fun. And I, like I said, I wish it was bigger than it is. But one of the things that I've been working on also is like for Comic-Con. Because I always had the War Machine marketing booth, and I've come to the conclusion that nobody really gives a fuck about War Machine marketing. Like, as we're not McFarlane Toys, we're not Entertainment Earth, oh, go to the War Machine marketing booth. Like, people are like, what? All right, fine. Just tell me the number. Like, that's all I care about. And so, one of the things that we're going to do is we're actually going to change it to War Machine Customs, where I want to basically sell nothing but custom action figures. So that this way, when people come to our booth, we literally have something they can't get anywhere else, not at all. So me and my
a lot more
right,
customs.
right, and exactly, because it's like, and there's really hardly anybody who really sells customs like this, especially the way we do it too, because we can also do like card backs and packaging and all. I mean, so we can really make it something. My whole thing is I call it toyetic art, because it's art that you can literally play with. So it's like if we do a custom card back, it comes with like a removable blister. You pop the blister off, take your figure out, have some fun with it, pose it, do whatever, take pictures, put it in the Millennium Falcon, whatever. And then when you're done with it, put it right back in the case, snap it shut, and put it on the wall, and it's back to being art. So it's like literally art you can play with. I have paintings all over the place. Other than hanging them up on my wall, I can't do much with them.
I think the word marketing as well has aged poorly in the digital age. Simply because it would imply that there's like an engagement service that you're offering. And I guess if people see that over a crowd of heads against the word custom, with custom, you know exactly what you get. With marketing, you think you're going to get a pitch in a... Exactly. And that's one of the reasons why I changed the name this year. Yeah. It's that now it's War Machine Custom Merchandising, because I had people coming up to me. I mean, as you know, I did street teaming a long time ago, and people will come up to me and be like, hey, Ro, I need a street team. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't done that in 15 years. Like, but that's what people, they're like, but it's marketing. And I'm like, yeah, but we make items for marketing. And then I'm like, that's a clunky way of doing things. So, and it also makes me realize too, like how many people probably needed t-shirts and was like, I don't need marketing. And how many people, kind of like vice versa. So that's kind of my thing, is that now I've sort of streamlined it so that it's merchandising, what you're getting, but yeah. Is once people understand the customization ability and the capability you've got, they don't lose it. So it's like you can only get more awareness, not less. So
exactly, that's exactly. Yeah, no, I mean it's funny because if you saw me at my booth, I know that people in booths around me, I always wonder like how sick they are of hearing me do my spiel to people all day long, or even the people who work at my booth, if they're like, oh, here he goes again. And I'm like, hey, come on over, let me tell you, like just doing it all day long, to the point where it's like, my wife will just like, I'll walk by her and she'll just be like mumbling my spiel, like just to herself. I'm like, it's just like, everyone just kind of knows it by heart in a really weird way. Shut up. Sorry. My wife's being a pain in my butt. But yeah, that's she, but that's, but again, it's like, to me, I'm so excited about it. That's why, I don't know if you saw, but we got written up in Forbes for it.
Yeah. I did read that, hear that on maybe a podcast or something.
Yeah. So it's in my email signature too. Right. But yeah, I mean, like that was a huge deal for me, at least. I mean, maybe it's not, maybe it didn't lead to like some massive surge in sales, but you know what? I mean, if I die tomorrow, I can go, hey man, at least I was in Forbes for something. That's not the worst. That's not the worst place in the world to be. Yeah,
I'll link it in the description for those who are intrigued.
Yeah, please. Yeah, it's I mean, it was really funny. That interview was funny too, because I thought he was just going to interview me and then pull some little tidbit, and he like put in the entire interview. It's like 6 pages long. I was like, oh my god, wasn't expecting that to happen, but okay, you know. But it was cool. I mean, it gave me a chance to really celebrate my sculptor, my partner with that, you know. And he's just incredible at what he does, and you know, he's very much the hands and I'm the mouth. But he's the stuff that he has created is nothing short of mind-boggling. Even when he tells me he's stuck on a figure and everything, when he's finally done with it, I'm like, he like, it's a really weird thing when you get an action figure in your hands and you feel like the tears start to well up, just because you're like, this is like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, you know. And then when you realize it's you with, you know, as your favorite Star Wars character, like, you know, Boba Fett or whatever, you know, when I got my first Mandalorian general you know, action figure, I didn't know what to say. I was so like, it almost looked like somebody had like knocked the wind out of me, because I was so just like, I never in my life thought I would see this ever in a physical form. And sure enough, there it is, you know. And he's only gotten better. He's only gotten better. And we also do the custom Funko Pops too, what I call pop style figurines.
Sure, for legal reasons.
Yeah, well, you know, it's funny. We started a knockoff company, so we just switched the N and the K. So our company's called Fuck No. So we make Fuck No Pops. Fuck no pals. That's what we call them. We don't call them pops. We call them pals. So our slogan is, will they make it? Fuck no, but we will. So we did like Charles Manson. We did Charlie Benante from Anthrax. We did Carla from Butcher Babies. Nice. So we have a bunch that we're planning on. But yeah, so we like to do like these, because we're, you know, I'm kind of like, cool, let's do a Jeffrey Dahmer pop. Like Funko's not going to do it. Like whatever, dude. You know, so we make like a series. We do like an edition of 5 or 10. And, you know, people are just like, yeah, I'll take it, man. Like, you know, better than any of these other pops that are out there that everybody's got 25 billion of, you know. It's like, yeah, I know. Nobody else is going to have a Charles Manson one. I'll guarantee you that. Or especially one that glows in the dark, too, you know. So yeah, so it's like, you know, I also like to be able to, just like getting tattooed and everything. It's like, I like to find great artists and be like, okay, let's collaborate. Let's do something together that can really, you know, that can help everybody, but in the end also can show people just really what's out there and what's attainable. You know, as a huge Star Wars fan, you know, I never would have in my life thought that a custom of me would even be a possibility. And now it's like, we've done them. We did one for, have you ever, there's a show called Aquarius. David Duchovny. David Duchovny's in it. It's it takes place around the Manson crimes, I think, something like that. I haven't really watched it, but they came to us and we did the main 3 actors, which is David Duchovny and the Great Damon, and I can't remember the woman's name, but you know, and we did the producer of the show too, you know. So it's like you know, it's just like these really cool ways to just celebrate. You know, whether it's, you know, like whether it's an event or just celebrate a person's passions. Like we did a few for a buddy of mine where they put their son in a different Halloween costume each year. Okay. And so it becomes their sort of timeline for their kid. So one year he was Darth Vader, and then he got a little bit older and he designed his own costume. So he was like a Rocketeer Ghostbuster. And then, you know, we're going to do another one. And, you know, just each year it becomes like another kind of, just this really cool timeline of their son's like Halloween costumes. And they're always just like, we can't believe you made it. I'm like, oh, you think you can't believe it? I can't believe it when I get it in my hands. And I'm like, oh shit, he did it. Fuck. We did one recently for this guy where the character in his movie was this girl with pink hair. She has a rabbit mask, like a half a rabbit mask, comes like up to here with these rabbit ears. And I feel like I'm giving away a trade secret right now, but whatever. But my guy couldn't figure out how to make these rabbit ears. He was like, nobody's got rabbit ears. How am I going to do? He took a stormtrooper's, like the bottom part of a stormtrooper leg between the knee and the ankle. Right. And he dremeled the shit out of it and made it into friggin' rabbit ears that fit into this. And I was like, are you kidding me? And he was like, no, it worked out really good. And I was like, oh my God. Like, just like I said, the stuff he comes up with is just, I'm like, you win, bro. Like, you win the internet, man. Like, I don't even know what to tell you. But again, that's why I like pairing up with good artists, because I feel like those are the people that really, you know, need to be celebrated in some way, shape, or form. So that Forbes article gave me an opportunity to talk about my sculptor a little bit, which, you know, because he's usually like, it's like a stay-at-home dad. He's like a stay-at-home dad. He's kind of like an introvert, you know, doesn't really like to talk to people unless it's like people like me, or we're talking about, you know, ankle or elbow articulation or something. You know, like he doesn't really, if it's me and him and like his wife and my wife, like they're just like, we're gonna be over here, you guys can talk about elbows and ankles. Like, you know, so it's like it's cool that, you know, I was able to give him props in that regard. So, but the custom action figure thing is really cool. Let me know if you ever.
Oh yeah, dude. If I ever have budget, it's a really good idea for like a really bespoke gift or something like that. So yeah, it's on my radar now.
Yeah, totally. It's like I said, man, it's when you get it in your hand, you just kind of like, each time I get it, like I know he's usually really hard on himself, so he'll be like, yeah, I think it came out okay, and I'm just like, there's been many a time where I call him up, I have a figure in my hand, and I'm like, fuck you for being this good at this. Like, really, like, you're an asshole. And he's like, thank you. And I'm like, I don't even know what to say, but it's like, it's almost unfair that he's so talented, you know? And it's like, I can barely draw a straight line with a ruler. And like, this guy's just like, just like, here you go, brand new thing. I'm like, okay. You know, we made a Megadeth action figure. We did an Iron Maiden, the Trooper action figure. We've done like the stuff he's managed to make. Just when I'm like, hey, how about if we try a, you know, Joker Darth Vader, and he's like, this is okay, cool, here you go. And I'm like, okay, let's try a Deadpool clone trooper. This is okay, cool, here you go. And I'm like, okay, that's weird and like unfair, but yeah, it is really cool, you know. So if you do get a budget, man, throw in a couple extra $100, and put in a custom action figure as part of one of the line items.
Yeah, man.
You know,
definitely. Who did your Star Wars tattoo? Have a drink first.
Well, I have two. So I have this one right here. I have the little Mandalorian mythosaur skull. Yeah. That I actually got back in like 1995 when nobody gave a rat's ass about Star Wars. And I had seen, I think the guitar player from Clutch actually has a Boba Fett tattoo. And I was like, I'm getting a Boba Fett tattoo. And so a buddy of mine did it. He did a completely horrifyingly terrible job with it. And then my friend out here, Todd Townsend in LA, friggin' amazing tattoo artist. He redid it and relined it. It's beautiful now. And then the do or do not, there is no try. That was Connor Garrity at Timeless Tattoo. He's also lead singer of All Hail the Yeti. Wow. Yeah, and I've known him for many years, and I don't recommend getting something on your fingers. It hurts like a motherfucker.
Looks good though.
It does. I always have to get them touched up, and it's like the worst day of my life when I have to do that. Because I'm always just like, you know, like, oh god, it's not even that many letters, but it's just like, oh, it's like lighting up, like holding a lighter under a paper clip and then taking the heated end and just scraping your skin. That's what it feels like. That's why I'm just like, okay, no, it's for a bigger reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to get more Star Wars tattoos. I've got only just the one, which is the Jedi Knight.
Boom, very nice. Very nice.
I keep thinking I want to wait for Celebration to come to London, and do you know how like they have like the tattoo bit with all the licensed artists?
You know, I regret not getting it. My friend got one at Celebration 4 out here. I think it was Celebration 4. And she had gotten one, and I remember I was like, yeah, you know, there was a bunch of times I was just wandering around the convention. Like I'd already kind of walked the halls. I did everything. And I was like, why didn't I just I just spent like $900 on like action figures. Like, why didn't I just get a tattoo while I was at it? You know, and it was one of those things I walked away like, oh, that was kind of stupid. But we actually just got a Celebration announced here for 2022 in Anaheim.
I missed that.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it just got announced either today or yesterday. But I'm hell bent on having a table there. And you know, it's funny too, because ever since Disney bought Star Wars, they're a lot more strict with their stuff. Yep. So originally when Lucasfilm was doing it, having custom action figures, not even an issue. Mm-hmm. But for me to showcase my customs, I have all these rules I got to follow. Like I can't sell any there. We can't make any there. All I can do is sort of just hand out like I was gonna say propaganda, which sounds very weird, but like promotions propaganda, but like hand out promotional stuff and like just show it to people, but we can't actually take orders there. We can't do any of that, so everything has to happen after the fact. But I'm like, if that's what I get, I'm 100% great with that. That's not even an issue,
Yeah.
But it's cool though, because like, if you want to be like a Jedi or Sith, we'll do like a custom lightsaber hilt. It's like, so it could be just something that's for you, like if you're like, well, I love whatever, I love baseball or something, like we could do it where it's like the bottom half is a baseball bat and then the lightsaber comes out, so we can just do something that's just really just super, just like I said, just unique for you.
My convention experience is I collect autographs from the original trilogy and get the posters signed. So there's one up there now. There's two in the New Hope up there, Empire and Jedi in the tube over there.
Very
I'm just waiting for it all to come back because we've lost a lot over the last year. So it's like shit, we're running out of dudes.
That was the other thing. At D23, I had an opportunity. It was like, Ian McDermott, like $50 to take a picture. I'm like, but Carrie Fisher, like $100, whatever. And now I'm like, well, that was friggin' dumb. So so I passed up on a lot of that. But actually, so my guy who's the Samurai Trooper, he's also one of my customizers. And I don't know if I can take him down or if I can really kind of show him to you from here. He takes the 18 and the 34-inch figures, and he turns them into samurais. So I'm going to show you. I don't know if you can see that right there.
Holy shit.
Sword and everything. There's a stormtrooper over there.
Wow.
I don't know if I can't tell if you can see it, but
yeah, it's good.
Yeah, so he does that sort of stuff too. So it's just like I said, it's like anybody who does this sort of stuff, I'm always just like, holy shit. But that's how me and him met. I kept buying his stuff off of eBay. And he lived only like an hour away. And then I was just like, he was like, oh, you're only an hour away? He's like, I'm always down there to play paintball. So he just kept delivering them to me. And then I was like, dude, I'm like, I'm buying all your stuff. And I feel like that's unfair, Yeah. So we ended up becoming friends after that. And now, so he'll make some customs for us too. But yeah, it's like, it's a cool thing though, man. And I can't wait for Celebration though. I would love to go to Celebration in London. Holy shit, that would be a dream come true.
It was awesome. I've got Carrie up there. Walked past her with the dog, didn't get a picture taken, regret it massively. But no, it was fucking wild. Absolutely fucking wild.
I do have a picture of Boba Fett at a convention, and he just wrote, "To row, you're cool, Jeremy Bullock." I was like, you know what, Boba Fett said I was cool. I could literally die right now, and I'm all good to go. Like,
are you glad that Daniel Logan didn't get the role of Boba in the new Mando, or are you happy it was
Tamora Morrison?
Yeah.
I love Tamora Morrison. I've been a huge fan of him since Once Were Warriors. So and nobody could do that as good as he did. Now, did he look a little thick? He did, but at the same time, I was kind of like, okay, what? I gotta, not for nothing, I went to the gym for the first time in like months today. So you know what? Who the fuck am I to say anything that he looks big? Okay, motherfucker was Boba Fett. I like, they could have given him horns, and I would have been like, yep, nope, that works for me. Great, no problem. So so to me, I love Tamora Morrison. I think he's awesome as all the clones. I think he's got like the best voice.
Yep.
And just like when that's what I loved in those episodes when in the Mandalorian, just when he was just like, yeah, this is my father's armor, et cetera, et cetera. Like it was. I remember like kind of getting all teary because I was like, this is like the best Father's Day episode ever. Like, I remember my dad, and here's how I remember, and I was just like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that I've met Daniel Logan a number of times. 3 of those times he was extraordinarily drunk. I don't think he can hold his liquor all that well. He's like one of those New Zealanders. I was like, I can drink anybody under the table, and then you see him passed out in the corner, and you're like, really, dude? Like, chill out, slow down. But I've met him a couple of times, and he's always been super. He's always been super cool. But it's like him playing. If they did something where he was playing the teenage young adult Boba Fett, sure.
Yeah.
But as the older, grizzled, post-Sarlacc pit Boba Fett, yeah, dude, that's all Tamora Morrison. That dude's grizzled for it. Like, he was really well made for it. So that's why I'm excited for this Book of Fett thing to come out, because I have no idea what they're gonna do, but I hope it's fucking dope. Yeah. But yeah, dude, if you can make it out here, man. Like I said, as soon as they announce Celebration UK, I've only been to the UK once, a couple of years ago, and it was awesome. And I got to go to, like, what is it? Forbidden Planet? Is that it?
Yeah.
No, is it Forbidden Planet? Yeah, Forbidden
Yes.
Planet. I got to go to fucking World's End. I got to go to all these places that I've just read about. Camden. I bought so much vinyl. It was stupid. It was just like,
dude, you want to come up north? That's what you want. If you're into your history, like where all the Roman and Viking forts are, that's all up here.
Oh, no kidding.
The drinking's cheaper. Everything else is cheaper up here.
Oh, hey, I'm game.
Yeah, man.
I'm more than game. Yeah, I think the most north we went was Stonehenge, I think.
Right.
I think. And that was, which was cool, but it was just, but I mean, we got to see like Queens of the Stone Age at the O2, we went to the Prince exhibit, so stuff like that, just things that I've always wanted to do, like we got to do, but, but to do something that's Star Wars related would be absolutely dope. Actually, it was funny when I went to Forbidden Planet, there was all the UK Comic-Con exclusives just like sitting there. And they're like, oh, yeah, we got like 50 of these. And I'm like, oh, my God. Like, because out here, it's like impossible to find. And you guys are like, no, we're just using it for like, to throw in the fire to keep us warm. And I'm like, what is happening? So it's like I walked away with so much stuff when I went out there. I was like, I got to stop.
I'm thinking about getting these posters properly framed and like inaccessible to get it like preserved. But the London Film and Comic-Cons, those ones are where they drag out like all the Star Wars people that don't often do it. Like one guy I've not got is Clive Revel.
Oh, yeah.
Like First Emperor. So it's like I'm holding out for people like that just in case.
I actually have a Funko Pop that's signed by what's his name? Hagen, the guy who played Biggs.
Oh, shit.
I want to see Derek Hagen, but I don't think
Garrick Hagen.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And I have a Funko Pop with it, and it's a $5,000 Funko Pop, but I'm like, he's not really going to be signing much in the near future. So, but I like stuff like that. Just, whenever somebody can show me something that's cool and rare and whatnot, I love things like that. That's why I know two people out here that are huge Kiss fans. Yeah. And whenever I talk to them, they're like, they'll show me on their phone, they'll like kind of show me around there and it's just fucking just Kiss stuff. And I like stuff like that just makes me like, oh, this is so cool. That's why if you ever come out here to Las Vegas, there's a Kiss mini golf at the Rio Hotel, and they have a whole Kiss museum in the back, and it is so killer. It's the coolest thing in the world. But one of the funniest things is they sell an empty packet, and it says air guitar strings.
Wow.
And it costs $5, and they sell out every time. I'm like,
that's a nephew gift.
I love it. It's such a great gag gift. It's hilarious. Mattel did that for Comic-Con one year. They had the Wonder Woman's invisible jet, and it was just like little things like pretending to hold something in, but it was just an empty package. So I love stuff like that, just goofy shit like that.
Right, should we move on to
Let's rock
the runner of roads? I'm keeping all this in, by the way. I love this shit.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I could talk about Star Wars for eons.
My
wife no longer cares. She's
we'll get the elephant in the room out of the way, which is the strongest opinion because talk about bands with people all day, and people are really passionate about this stuff. But I've realized the strongest opinion I've ever held is that The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars film. I just wanted to know if you were recoiling on that or not.
Oh yeah, no, can't do it, dude. Sorry, man. That sequel trilogy was again. I have my thoughts on it, and here's the thing, it's just like metal bands. Okay. And music in general. It's art. And if I don't like it, but you like it, that doesn't mean that it's stupid to me. If somebody really loves Justin Bieber, yeah, it's not my thing, but it hits you on a certain emotional level. I can't take that away from you. I can't be like, you're stupid and you don't know anything. Like, no, I listen to Kiss. I'm like, who the hell am I? I listen to bands. I listen to Mindless Self-Indulgence and bands. I listen to Insane Clown Posse. I've been a juggalo for the last 20-something years. It's just, we all feel it in such a different way. And for me, to sit there and, I do feel like they did. I feel like for me, they did it a disservice doing it the way they did. But at the same time, it's always easy to play. As a friend of mine says, it's always easy to be the general after the war, and that's kind of it. That's kind of it. It's like, I can't I can't sit there, after they just put 2.5 to 3 years of filming, acting, directing, lighting, special effects. I can't 2 years later be like, they're stupid. Like, okay, like I wasn't there for any of that. Like I didn't have a say in any of that. So how can I sit there and be like, oh well, your vision is stupid? Do I not like the vision? Yeah, it didn't really hold well for me, And there are plenty of things I really do wish they redid or just took advantage of a little bit better. But again, when it comes to a movie, like I had a friend who told me, who said something, and every time I hear somebody say this, I always call them out on it. But I always hate it when somebody's like, "Well, if I was in your shoes," and I'm like, "Okay, really? So if you're a woman, and if you were in an Indian metalhead's shoes from New Jersey, like, well, yeah, tell me what you would do. Tell me exactly what you would do if you were me." Like it's just such a stupid statement, and that's kind of how I feel about the Star Wars thing. Like I know people who are just like, I will never watch the prequels, and I'm like, really? Like, and that's why, like, when I try to watch Last Jedi, I mean, believe me, there's a lot of fast forwarding that goes on in my world when it comes to those movies, more so than even the love scenes in the prequels, because there are just certain things where I'm just like, okay, really? And even in the realm of science fiction, I find this hard to believe. But again, we have that luxury of, we have that post-production luxury of being able to comment on it. And, and if you're going to be like, well, that's stupid. It's like, there was that movie employed 22,000 people, look at the credits for 5 minutes. Like you'll see all of the people that, all the hard work that went into it. And I can't say anything against that. And it is still Star Wars. Do I wish it was better? Yes. Do I have my own theories of what I wish they could have done and all? Of course I do. I'll never forget when episode 7 came out and they had that Constable Zuvio figure, and it was in the first wave of 4-inch figures and the first wave of 6-inch figures, and the dude's not even in the fucking movie. And that was when I realized, because I make action figures, and we do like larger production scale action figures, like we'll do 1,000 pieces and stuff like that, but it takes almost a year to do action figures between tooling and sculpting and approvals and all. And so when they made that figure, he was still very much in the movie.
Yeah.
But by the time they edited it down to what it became and he wasn't in the movie anymore, they were already in production. But for a lot of people, they think that's so stupid. Why'd they do that? And it's like, well, they didn't make it last Tuesday. It's not like they just made the decision last Tuesday to do this. This is something that they had to start 2 years ago and bring it to someplace now. And, that's why it always kills me when, because I'm a big Gentle Giant fan. I love the Gentle Giant stuff. They're some of my favorite things. Gentle Giant and Sideshow, I love their stuff. But Gentle Giant came out with some Stormtrooper mini bust, and people were like, that's so stupid. It's just a repaint. Why can't they just? And I'm like, oh, really? Why can't they just use their $1 billion 3D printing machine to do a better job? Really? Really? That's where you're going to go with this. So that's why when it comes to, if you liked Last Jedi, if you liked, Rise of Skywalker and everything, like, again, I can't say anything because it's still Star Wars. I would like it to be canon with the Christmas special, with the holiday special, where we can still kind of go on a different path and a different timeline. But that's just me, and that's a perfect world, and I don't live in a perfect world, so I'm okay with it, But we still get stuff like KOTOR. We still get Knights of the Old Republic. We still get, like the Mandalorian, the Grogu stuff. We still get to see a live action Ahsoka. The Bad Batch is super cool. I really dig that. The Clone Wars, absolutely. Clone Wars and Rebels are absolutely amazing and stunning, and just there's been more than enough times where I've actually cried during Rebels and Clone Wars because it's just so heartfelt and so emotional. And so that's why, to me, I can never sit there and be like, fuck Star Wars, I'm done. Like, no, man, there's still, just like listening to a record and not liking 2 songs and being like, fuck that record. It's like, okay, there's still 10 awesome songs there, so. It's
interesting because the one thing you mentioned there was like, we live in a post-production world. And it's like, I think the sequel trilogy is what exposed that. And it actually speaks to a lot to this Roadrunner project, because there was a period of time before 2015 where things just happened and you took them at face value and you took it as you found it. And then when Star Wars came out, then you start second guessing and going, right, well, okay, well, Mark Hamill needs to lose weight. Harrison Ford got hit on the leg with the Millennium Falcon and all this stuff. And how does that affect the output? Blah, 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 blah. And I think for me, when we talk about stuff, I fucking love just tracking like the intention versus delivery. And as you say, what was happening in pre-production that didn't come out in post-production, how did that affect the whole role?
Right.
But when we talk about, I'm gonna shift it to Roadrunner because it is poignant. Because now I'm trying to
absolutely is, dude. There is a connection for sure.
Because I'm trying to find methods in the madness. Because you and I know we revere the label in a sense that we know it had a particular mark on metal. People must be fucking sick of me saying this, but like the top-down way of looking at it is, it was a vehicle. Roadrunner was a vehicle for disruption. Massively a vehicle for disruption. And when I was speaking to Mark,
great way to put it.
Yeah. When I was speaking to Mark Abramson yesterday, it was like, well, look, you had Simon Cowell trying to put his foot in the door with all these music and algorithmically generated hits and revenue streams. And then there's 9 nut jobs in jumpsuits who are selling platinum records. That's disruptive in a positive way. So how can we reverse engineer that, right? Our generation and go, okay, how can we administrate metal in the same way that Roadrunner did? Because really, if you think about it, the trajectory of Roadrunner as a label, with making bands that were fringe such as Slipknot and the death metal stuff, all that stuff, and making it commercially viable. If you take the trajectory and you take it to its logical conclusion, it puts like death metal on the same table as pop. Yeah. But it didn't happen. It kind of stopped, really. I know I could overanalyze that a bit, but this is why the project is sort of taking a form, because I'm like, well, we need to look at this because no one's looked at the history of Roadrunner.
Right. It's almost like we need a kind of a psychological evaluation of everything that sort of took place, because like you said, it's not, you know, that's why I always love when people talk about like bands on the radio. And I'm like, it's not like a radio station likes a song and then they just play the shit out of it. It's like, there's so much that goes into you getting to hear that song on the radio, you know, and that's kind of it. If you really do understand the psychology of everything, that's one of the reasons why I love Doc Coyle's podcast, is because, you know, when I listen to people like Carl Severson or you know, I just listened to the Tim Williams from VOD one the other day, or Carla Harvey, you know, or just some of the people that, you know, me and Doc sort of grew up around in that era, Mark Hunter from Chimera, you know, like to hear all of their perspectives on it, like these are all the things that are so important to building up the sort of building the universe of what happened in that time period. And a lot of people just think like, well, Roadrunner's stupid for getting Nickelback or, you know, something like that. And I'm like, no, there's a whole, you know, there's a whole house that was being built, you know, and you can't just be like, I hate the bathroom, that's so stupid, you know, like, no, it's like there's so much that's going on that is the reason why the bathroom is where we put it, you know, and it's very much that's why I love what you're doing with this, because it really does help. And like you talking to Abramson and just all the people, it's just like it kind of puts each brick on top of the right other bricks to fill in every single gap of what's happening and what did happen, you know, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum, that's for sure.
I mean, there's 2 angles to it. There is what we've said there is understanding it. And then there's the other angle, which is we're much better at communicating these days than we were 20 years ago. And I find it now kind of unacceptable for people to say that Roadrunner shat on bands and Roadrunner did shit deals. There is an architecture behind it which explains everything. Like a big one being like, I didn't put this in the documentary as it stands, which is getting redone. But if you think about sort of like 1983 and 1986 period, it's about 25 albums, original signings. So what Case had to do there was he had to sign the band, give the advance, develop it and promote it. So we know the deals were kind of baby band deals at $5,000, and the marketing, let's be really, really naive and say it was another $5,000. So that's in like a 3-year period, any given period, any 3 financial years, you've got about $250,000 going out the door. And that's pure gamble, gamble.
Well, Case was really smart with something, in my opinion, when he started the All Blacks and Blue Grape, because then he was like, cool, we'll work with your publishing and we'll make your merch. Yeah. So it wasn't just, I think if he had solely thought like, I'll just do record deals, I don't think Roadrunner would necessarily have lasted the way it did. I think it had to have all of those kind of components, the publishing rights, and again, I can't speak to how good or bad those deals were, but at the same time, when you do have multiple irons in the fire, you don't, you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And that was always something that I always very much respected that they did was, to have Blue Grape be this vehicle for, especially when you're signing a band like a Sepultura, these guys are from teenagers from Brazil, they like when they came to the country, I think all they could say was yes and no or something like that. Like they couldn't speak English, and it's like, okay, well, who's going to do your merch? And they're like looking at each other like, okay, and but that's when they come in and they're like, look, we'll do your merch also. So it's like you kind of get a really, I don't want to say a full package, but like you definitely get more than just here's a shitty record deal. Like you at least get like, okay, cool, somebody's handling our publishing, somebody's handling our, somebody's looking out for our interests in these sorts of ways. And I think without that, Roadrunner, in my opinion, Roadrunner would have either fizzled quickly or, would have just been probably acquired by somebody else and then just pretty much, laid the rest. Yeah.
To relay what you said there, but putting the shoe on the other foot, from the label's perspective, they're saying, we think there's something viable in your brand, lads. However, because we want this to work, we want to remove all dependencies. So we're dependent on your business acumen on the management side and the touring side and some of the other administrative sides. We'll just take that.
Right.
It might not be favorable terms, but I can't speak to that because I don't know the details on that side of it. But I'm sure like many of the complaints and retrospectives on Roadrunner, usually it doesn't quite as favor the artist as much as they would have liked. It's like, well, you can, again, the general after the battle stuff. They're trying to push your brand and they're trying to make you a global name. Sometimes those are the compromise and the controlling interest needs to be in the person that's been in the record industry for 30 years at that point.
Right. And one of the benefits at the very least also was that, especially during those years and even beyond, is that you had avid metal fans like that running the business. You had your Monty Connors and you had your Mark Abramsons and you had, all of these kinds of people who, it wasn't just like, oh, gotta get going to work today at Roadrunner, drink my coffee and punch in. And it was like, no, that was the best part of it, was that it was a labor of love for everybody that worked there. Yeah. And yes, you might get really drunk at a show and you have to, but like, it's funny. It's like you'd get really drunk at a show with a band like Typo Negative or whatever, but then you were still in the office the next day because you still had shit to do. You still had bands to push. You still had radio stations to call and, retail companies to call and press to call. Like, you could be hungover, but you're still at work, and I think that was one of those things where it's just kind of like, man, Mark Abramson was wasted that last night, but yeah, he's there with a, ice pack on his head and he's got coffee, but he's on the phone with, WAAF right now trying to sell, the new Fear Factory song. Like I think that was kind of one of those parts of the deal, of the record deal, that was never explicitly really put into, kind of put on paper, if you will. Is that like, yeah, you get this kind of deal, this many records, or you get this kind of publishing deal, this kind of merch deal, but it was never like, but more than anything, you get such a dedicated team who is all about this fucking music. Like this isn't just a job for anybody, not one person, and we went there and we lived it and we bled for it. And we just, that was always what was so awesome for me, was just that vibe of like, it's up to us. This isn't, we don't have these crazy Sony budgets and Warner Brothers budgets. It's like, we got to figure this out. And we have, $10 and some pocket lint. All right, what can we do? Like it was a lot of that sort of thing, but more than anything, everybody there had just as much passion for the bands as the bands did for making the music. And I think that was always a component in the, I always felt like that was kind of a variable in the equation that no one ever really gave a lot of kind of credence towards. It's like it was always kind of just a known thing. But it's like when you look at, like we were saying, like kind of like building the house, it's like it's a lot of times people won't think that is really what the foundation of the house really was the passion of the employees that work there, and I think that's an important aspect that a lot of times gets overlooked.
Yeah, I mean,
because of the nickelbacks and all that sort of stuff.
To package that point and put a ribbon on it, I'll ask you what I asked Mark Abramson yesterday, and it speaks exactly to your point. So Typo eventually went gold after like a 2-year campaign, and this is a couple of years before you joined as an intern. But my question would be, is there any other label, major or indie, that would know how to handle and push and optimize the opportunities for Typo negative?
No, most likely not in the same way. And I think Typo was also it was also a really weird perfect storm of sorts, in that it's not like it was Carnivore, which was very straight ahead hardcore punk kind of vibe, and it kind of just it hit this really weird kind of sensibility that was almost Joy Division-ish, but not exactly. But it wasn't. So it was like this really, it slid in just in between this kind of pop new wave kind of thing, and it just kind of it just hit a sweet spot. And I don't think if Relapse had them, I don't think if Century Media or Nuclear Blast at the time, or a lot of those labels, I think if any of them really had Typo, I don't think it necessarily would have worked the way it did at Roadrunner, and that was, and it's funny because again, it's like it really was a perfect storm. I mean, he was in Playgirl and all of this stuff. Not for nothing, I sold a copy of that Playgirl. I actually found it not too long ago. I sold the thing for $400. Like, people are still rabid over that stuff, but that's kind of it. It happened to work in such a really weird way. But it's funny because when you put the shoe on that other foot, there's plenty of bands that either Roadrunner passed on or maybe just didn't get because they got outbid or whatever. And there's the stories about System of a Down and Korn and Deftones, and people are like, oh my God, I can't believe Roadrunner didn't get Deftones. But I'm like, okay, yeah, but if we did, would we have been able to make them successful? As opposed to Deftones being on Madonna's label through Warner Brothers on Maverick, they had money and power and influence and all these, and so if Roadrunner had gotten Deftones, would the world know Deftones the way we know them now? So it's kind of that sort of equal but opposite sort of scenario. It's like, yes, we did well with Typo Negative. Would other labels possibly have done better? Probably not. But at the same time, if we had gotten Korn, would we have been able to do that same sort of thing?
I think a lot of it's to do with the process, isn't it? So I know My Chemical Romance is another example of one that got missed. But I think the thing is, when the vetting process for a new signing came about, it's usually everyone's got to have a buy-in. I think it was Jonas, it's got to be Case, it's got to be whoever's the A&R champion at that point. And you said it yourself, would they have done the best for that band? If one person in that chain isn't all in, the answer is no. Right. And that's the thing, isn't it? Because that, as we say, when the house is built, everyone's there making sure that everything can happen for everyone as much as possible. Right. There wasn't strictly, and I can't remember who I was saying this to, but there wasn't really one role. Even if you were the marketing guy, even if you were the street team guy, there's bound to be some instances where you're actually, fucking, the distributor's factory is shut down. We've got to drive out to fucking upstate and we need to package these. Blah, 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 blah.
You don't got to tell me. I have plenty of those kinds of stories, Yeah.
But if one part of that chain, one link of that chain isn't quite galvanized correctly, you're not going to you're not pushing the bands as much as you possibly could. And that's built in by design.
Right. And that was something I learned. I saw a lot when I was working there full time, in the 2000s, was I started to see people who were kind of like, oh, I don't like that band. I don't think they're that good, so I'm not really going to put a lot of effort into it. And that was the mentality that I never liked, and I was always really pissed off at. And while I didn't at the time, obviously I was much younger, so I didn't really have the experience. But I was always just kind of like, why are we not doing this for this band? Why aren't we pushing them hard? And a lot of times it'd be like, well, that band's a pain in the ass or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's not up for us to determine. Our job is to push these bands. And as the street team guy, I have kids who were clamoring for promotional items to hand out because they were so ecstatic about our bands. And, to be like, oh, sorry, we're not doing anything for them. It's like, it was one of those things where, you know, I would just kind of be like, wow, like, you know, we're all supposed to be on the same team. Why do I feel like at times we're on very weird opposite mentality levels, you know?
Yeah.
But back then, you know, in the 80s and in the 90s, you know, you had a very dedicated group of metalheads that worked there. You know, you had people who rode their bicycle to work, and you know, you had like a lot of that sort of stuff where, you know, everyone went to every show. You know, you went to your shows, you went to Roadrunner shows, you went to Metal Blade shows, you went to everybody's shows. Everybody went to everybody's shows, and that was I think that was a snapshot in time that'll never really come back. I mean, never, you know, it'll never quite be like that ever again. And I was only there kind of for the tail end of that sort of thing, but it was such a great feeling to just be like surrounded by metalheads who love metal.
I feel like there's two sort of catalysts in the last sort of 20 years of metal changing. Maybe it's, I don't know, maybe I'm just off the top of my head. One's Roadrunner being bought out by Warner and all those people getting sacked. The second is Zakk Wylde stopping drinking. Something changed that day.
Right. Suddenly the earth just kind of slowed down a little. To me, it's actually not Warner Brothers. It was when Universal bought half of Roadrunner. That to me was the big change. That was the catalyst. That to me was the catalyst. That was when I really noticed the shift in the paradigm, and especially the shift in the way people there were thinking about stuff. And it was a little, from my perspective, it was kind of gross, because it was almost like this vibe of kind of like, you know, money, you know, and it was almost kind of like okay, if you want to do that in your own time, like that's fine, but like you're doing that like in the middle of a meeting, and that's creepy and gross, you know. and I thought that was kind of it. It's like once that really happened, I that's when I felt the paradigm shift in a huge way, you know. But yeah, I mean, since I wasn't there for the Warner Brothers thing, I mean, I you know, when it happened, I kind of felt like Roadrunner was already sort of kind of petering out anyway. You know, but then once Warner bought them, I was just kind of like, all right, either they're gonna. So that was the thing when Universal bought half of Roadrunner, they were like, look, we'll help you with Slipknot and Nickelback, because those are the ones we want. Obviously, they're the biggest bands, but they were like, everything else, you guys know what you're doing, so keep doing it. And if you need our help, then cool. And that was the good part about it, because we were like, oh wow, fucking kick ass, you know, like we can kind of go to them for you know, additional support or whatever it is, you know. Maybe, you know, we can't get that one band on the radio, we really want to get them on the radio. Universal's got better radio people, they can push it a little, you know. There was a feeling of like, okay, cool, they're not coming in and just being like, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're cool, you're fired, you know. There was always kind of that feeling of like, is that what they're going to do? But then they were like, no, you guys know metal, we don't.
Yeah,
go do your metal thing.
That's fair, because they would have wanted the indie credibility. That's probably why they fucking bought it in the first place, right?
Right. I think so too. And also I think they saw that like bands like Nickelback and Slipknot, like that they were very much anomalies in the scope of things. You know, I don't think they were looking at like Killswitch Engage like, this is something we need to look at. You know, they looked at the Slipknot numbers, they looked at the Nickelback numbers, and they were like, this is a worthwhile investment, you know, and I think that's really what they saw, you know. But yeah, I think that was really, but again, it's like I felt that there was a definite what's the word I'm looking for?
Shift.
Kind of like a mental shift. You know, it went from the idea of kind of like the idea of when you are doing something in your house as a hobby, and then suddenly Facebook decides to buy you or something like that, you know, and it's like suddenly you're like, oh, I was doing this and making $40 a week on this, but now Facebook just bought me for, you know, $80 million, and so now whatever, you know. It's like you could, you know, there was definitely a mentality shift that happened. And for people like me who are, you know, kind of on the lower end of things, because street marketing was kind of what I call the redheaded stepchild. We were the kids' table, you know. We weren't retail, and we weren't radio, and we weren't press. You know, we were, you know, I dealt with literally the people who were buying our records, you know. But because I wasn't really dealing with, you know, professionals in a way, we were kind of pushed to the side in that regard. And so because I kind of it was almost like, I looked at it from a certain point of view of just like, wow, like it's almost literally like, oh my God, like you used to be cool. You used to be cool. Like what happened? And it's like, oh, suddenly you became a hipster and now you use mustache wax and carry around an old school typewriter and like suddenly you think you're cool and like, like that kind of thing where you're like, wait, yesterday you were wearing a Slayer shirt and you were getting, a pentagram tattooed on your chest and now you're like, oh yeah, twist up my mustache, and you're like, wait, what? And that was kind of my thing, was that for me it was so it was such a cold water in the face kind of thing where it's just like you're just kind of like shocked into seeing kind of watching the change happen and being like, do I have a part in this? That was kind of really where it was for me. But
how are you doing for time? Just because I want to do.
I'm great, dude. I don't care. Okay. I got to talk to you till 8 a.m. I don't really care.
Excellent. So let's sit with this chronologically. So going to do a bit of signposting here. Your background is kind of extensively recorded in the X-Men podcast. So if you just go onto Spotify and you type in Kohli, which you can copy and paste from the title of this video or this whatever you're listening to this on, a lot of that stuff is dealt with. So I'll try not to retread on all that stuff, and I'll try and expand on what was discussed. Sure. You start off with, is it Street? What's it called? Street Sense? What's the first role before you get the Streetwise, that's it. Before the internship at Roadrunner. So when you get into Roadrunner,
sort of, you have it a little bit backwards, but that's okay. Okay. So basically, what happened? I interned at Roadrunner in '95. Yeah, I think from like '95 to '98, I interned at Roadrunner. Okay. And then I moved to Los Angeles right after I graduated college. And that's when I was just kind of, I was, I had my zine, I had my fanzine, Shock to the System. So I really thought that I was going to move to LA and, I knew all these people and it was going to be great and I was going to da-da-da-da-da, and it just didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And Streetwise had just started up when I was living out here in 98, 99. And they had gotten Slipknot and System and who else? Slipknot, System, and Static X. Okay. And those were the bands that they really made big just because of the fact that, at the time, email wasn't a thing that everybody had. So, they were able to kind of tap into a very, that was another perfect storm where they just were able to tap into the right people at the right time. Mm-hmm. And so Streetwise, so then when I moved back to Jersey and New York in 2000, the very beginning of 2000, that's when I started working at Roadrunner full time.
Right. Okay. The chronology is correct now. So when you first interned at Roadrunner, who are you working under?
I was working under Sophie Diamantis. She was the head of PR at the time, and she was super awesome. Fucking love her. And then this lovely woman, Jamie Roberts, came in, and she wasn't really a metalhead. She was more into a lot of I would say more indie rock, if you will. Okay. But I think that's why they sort of hired her, was because they were like, we kind of need a broader perspective than just, yes, we can get into Metal Maniacs. Yes, we can get into Kerrang. We can get into Metal Hammer. Like, these are all the places we can get into. What we need is the New York Times. We need Spin. We need Rolling Stone. We need somebody who understands that language in a way. Yeah. As opposed to, like I said, it's like to get, metal bands and fanzines, that's, fish in a bucket, to get, Typo Negative on the cover of Metal Edge, that's kind of a given, So what we were trying to do is, I think what they were trying to do is really try to broaden out the press angle of it. And so I was working under Jamie for a good long time, and she worked there for a really long time. And so she was, so I was working under her. And then when I moved back to Jersey, because I stayed in contact with her, we were very good friends. When I moved back to Jersey and Roadrunner offered me one of 3 jobs, they were like, you have 3 jobs, like pick one. I was like, oh, fuck, that's cool.
Really?
That's never happened to me since. They were like, you can either be in the touring department, in the publicity department, or in retail. And I was like, well, I've already done PR and retail doesn't really interest me. So I was like, all right, cool, I'll do the tour thing. But the funny thing was that when I was living in LA, I had a friend's t-shirt company called Room 13, and I had gotten them on Ozfest. And I had helped get them on Ozfest, and I told the owner that I was just going to move back to Jersey, work a shit job, and then head out on tour with them on Ozfest and work their booth, and then go back to LA. And that was my goal, was, okay, I'm going to do this. And Jamie was the one who was like, look, dude, like, do you really want to be traveling in a van and do it? Like, she's like, you have a chance to really do something right now and do something, you know, that's bigger than that. Okay. You know, because I was very much on the fence, like, oh man, do I really want to take this full-time job? I can't go on Ozfest, you know. And she was the one who really convinced me that, like, no, this is what you should do. Awesome. But the whole time I was there, I was like, how do I get back to LA? How do I get back to LA? Because I don't like cold weather and I hate the rain.
And they had the LA office at that point, didn't they?
They did. And that was the funny thing, was that I was always vying for a job there. And they were like, sorry, man, there's nothing. Sorry, there's nothing. Like, I would just work out of their office just for nothing. Like, just because I was friends with everybody there. And I'd be like, come on. And then right when I moved back to Jersey, they moved the publicist out to LA. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what the hell is that? I've been trying to do this for the last year and a half. So it was one of those things where I was like, I can't believe it. But, you know, everything has to happen the way it has to happen. So, you know, so I came in and that's when I became the tour coordinator for Roadrunner.
Let's compare the times then, because for your internship, 95 through to 98, we've got Typo has just gone gold. Max has just left Sepultura. And there's this sort of period where they're trying to diversify, as you alluded to. And they've got the flagship acts that are churning out the goods. But I don't think there's something that's really resonant there yet. I don't think there's no one smashing out the park with gold records yet until, say, the Slipknot, until you come back. And then when you come back, it is post Slipknot Ozfest 1999.
Oh, for sure.
That must have been a massive difference in vibe between those two bits. Well,
it was actually kind of funny that you say it like that, because so when I was there in 95 to 98, Max left. You know, Roots was fucking ridiculous. Who else was out? I wasn't there for Obsolete, for Fear Factory, but like Ozfest 97 was like Roadrunner rules the Ozfest, because we had like 5 or 6 bands on that first year. So I was doing a lot of that sort of stuff, where it was a lot of baby bands, Cold Chamber and VOD and all these kinds of bands. But then we still had, you had Machine Head, who was kind of like, not that I think they're a grade B band, but like, when you had like your Typo Negative, which is like a big band, then you had like kind of Fear Factory, which was bigger, and then you had sort of Machine Head underneath that, so I was just calling fanzines and stuff like that all the time. It was just calling fanzines, calling like local press, so for me, it was so much fun, because everyone was just like, talk a Cold Chamber, sure, and it was kind of like, it was so weirdly easy in a weird way, which was really cool. But we were in a different office too. We were way downtown, so it was a little, for lack of a better term, it was a pretty dingy office, because that was kind of where they really that was kind of Roadrunner 2.0 was that office.
Not Lafayette, but the one after.
No, Lafayette is the one I was talking
Lafayette.
about.
Okay.
Yeah. No, sorry. Yes. Sorry. So they were on Lafayette. I forgot about that. Sorry. I worked at another place on Lafayette. They were on Lafayette, and then they moved to Broadway. To I can't remember, 562 or something like that, Broadway. And then when I moved back to New York and Jersey in 2000, we moved from that office to the 902 Broadway one that was more uptown. And that was kind of cool, because it was really kind of neat, because it was almost like being a kid moving from your parents' 2-bedroom apartment or 1-bedroom apartment to a house in the suburbs, where you're just like, there's so much room, it was just like, it really felt like we moved up. But I do know that was because of Slipknot. That was because of that post Slipknot money, because it was, it's funny, because when Slipknot first happened, this was actually a really kind of a goofy story, because I was working at a place called Andy Gold Management, and we were managing Static X and Typo and Ultra Spank and all these bands. And System of a Down came out, and everyone was so happy that they got signed, because the scene was super tight. Everybody loved each other in the scene, and they sold like 2,500 records their first week, and everybody was ecstatic, like, yeah, that's awesome! Oh my god, Armenian band does da da da. And then Static X came out, and they sold like 5,500 records, and it was like a friendly rivalry. So we're like, haha, take that, System. And then these 9 retards from Iowa come out, and they sell like 14,000 records their first week, and we're all just like, wait, what just happened? And so the first time I got to see them was at Ozfest 99, and it was the very last day of the tour. And They went on at 9 a.m. And the entrance that me and some of my people came in on was the opposite side of where they were playing. So it's just me and like 4,000 kids just running, like sprinting just to try to get there, because they were only playing 20 minutes. They only had those 20-minute sets. And so I still have pictures from being in the photo pit from that show, but it was just like, it was maniacal. It was because at the time there was no YouTube, no anything. So all you could do was read people's reviews of Slipknot, of how insane the shows were. And so we were literally, and it was like Slipknot, Static, Rob Zombie, Slipknot, Static, Rob, like these were like the big bands that year. But we were the last show. So we had no idea what this Slipknot band was all about. We had no idea. And then we saw it and we were all just like, holy shit. I don't know if I talked about my meeting Slipknot in LA on Doc's podcast.
No.
So Static X played on October 30th, 1998, I think it was, at the Roxy. And being a Kiss fan, and I know they're huge Kiss fans, they came out dressed as Kiss for Halloween, and I was like, wow, great. And so I was having a grand time at the show. And a couple weeks prior, a buddy of mine, Ty, who used to work at Roadrunner, he used to do retail. He was like, hey, we got this band called Slipknot. I think you're gonna really dig it. And so I was like, all right, cool. And he's like, I'm gonna send you a shirt. Okay, great. Shirt said Slipknot. Back had the barcode and said people equal shit. I was like, fucking sold. I'm in. So I'm wearing the shirt at the Static X show, and all of a sudden I feel two hands grab me and throw me into the wall. And I'm like, what? And at first I thought it might be friends of mine, but I was like, that was really aggressive. Like, I don't think I know these people. And it's these two guys, and they're in my face, and they're like, where the fuck did you get that shirt? And I'm like, what? My buddy at Roadrunner sent it, like, what the fuck? And they're like, oh man, we're sorry. We thought you might be in a band that was trying to rip our shit off. My name is Sean, and this is Corey. We're in Slipknot. And I was like, okay, like, I just love the shirt. I just think the people equal shit thing is great. And they're like, here's our cassette sampler. We're in the studio right now. And I'm like, okay. And I just remember being with my, obviously now ex, and I put it in her tape deck, and it was like, I think it was like Eyeless and Spit It Out, maybe something like that. And Sick, maybe. And I just remember listening to it, and I remember just driving the whole, like, she was driving, and I'm just like, and she's like, what's the matter? I'm like, you don't get it. This is going to change things. This is going to change things. There is something seriously demented about this band, because it's like, the album artwork where they're all just kind of standing there, like, and I'm like, there is something seriously wrong with this band, but this music is going to fucking flip people out. People are going to go ballistic. And she wasn't really a metalhead. She liked Korn and stuff like that. But like, when I heard this, I was like, we're seeing something new. We are seeing something different. This is going to be insane. And sure enough, they did Ozfest. It was crazy. Then they came to Europe and the UK, and they set that place on fire. And then when I started working was right when when I started working at Roadrunner, was right when they had got back from their UK tour. Right. When they were just the kings of everything, the kings of destruction. And that's when I kind of really met them. And that's when I told Sean and Corey about that story. And they're like, yo, that was you. No way. But that was really the first time I met them, was them fucking throwing me into a wall. So that's a Roadrunner story you won't really hear from anybody else.
I'll stick to the actual questions. So when you rejoin, you go as a touring coordinator. So how does that differ from a tour manager? Because I imagine there is a line drawn at some point, and I think the tour manager is more band management, external aligned, and a touring coordinator is label aligned. How does this work?
So basically, so my boss Harlan was the I guess he was not tour manager. He definitely wasn't the tour manager. He was kind of like the head of touring, if you will. And I was his coordinator. So I was basically like his assistant, but I wasn't like an assistant in the way of like, hey, get me coffee and get me a bagel. I was handling all the guest lists, all the ticket buys, making sure posters got to all the venues. I was doing all of that sort of stuff. So I was, in a really weird way, like one of the most important people at Roadrunner without realizing it was, because I was the guy who everybody had to come to and go, Rolling Stone is, coming to the show. I need tickets. And I'd have to be like, I was the gatekeeper, which was really kind of cool. And it put me in such a funny position, because like I would with a New York show, especially because they were always so chaotic. We always had such a huge guest list and all these kinds of things. And I was always the guy who's like, I got to cut your list. And you'd see people like, no, like what? I'll give you anything. And I'm just like, this is an interesting game I'm playing. But like, I would have like 10 extra VIP passes in my pocket. And then somebody like Jonas would come up to me like, bro, I have a guy here. Can we do anything? I'd be like, hang on. And I like run away for like 5 minutes. I'd smoke a cigarette and then come back and be like, you're lucky I actually found these, It's like that kind of thing, and they'd be like, oh my God, thank you. And I'm like, yeah, I still have like 7 left. So whatever, so I would do that sort of thing. But that was a great, it's funny. It was a great gig in that, it put me in touch with literally every promoter in the country, which was awesome. So I could go to a concert anywhere and just get in, no problem. But that also kind of fueled how spoiled I got when it came to going to shows. Because I'd be like, no VIP, what's wrong with you? Because I was constantly walking around with like laminates and all access passes because I was there before the show, I was there after the show, So it was just, and I always had to run, figure out like all the backstage areas so I could get from one place to another very quickly, so I didn't have to go through the crowds and stuff, didn't get hassled by security. So I got a little concert spoiled, if you will, when it comes to when it was that, because it was just like it was literally I knew every security guard in New York. It was just one of those things where I'd be like, I knew a guy at Hammerstein Ballroom, and when Tool first came out with their Enema stuff, and everybody was going batshit crazy for Tool. Yeah, they were selling. We were able to get like. We were able to kind of have a little ticket buy because I knew the ticketing lady from it wasn't Live Nation, it was like a Nederlander or whatever promotional company is. But and I was like, hey, people here want to go, and they're like, okay, here's let me know how many tickets. This is how much it costs, and we got it for the base price and all that. And I ended up selling my tickets for $600 each because the security guard was like, "No, I'll just walk you in. I'll just walk in." All right, cool, like that works, But it was that. So that's basically what I did. So it was me handling the guest lists for everybody, and that is what led into the street team thing.
Your role was everything that wasn't sound and lighting, effectively, when the van pulls up. So yeah. You get thrown at Ozfest. Now, this is where my research took a bit of a dive because I immediately started looking at the Pantera set list from that year. And it's just fucking, there's something about it, man. I don't know what it is, but when you look at like Woodstock 99 through to sort of like 2001, 2002, maybe like the convention for the front of house guy is to capture, maybe to mic the crowd when they're capturing live footage or something, because it's just fucking going off. But right. For some of us who might be a little bit too young to remember Ozfest in its prime, and this is more of a marketing question than a vibe question. What impact does Ozfest have? What was it a vehicle for in those days, and why was it important to Roadrunner that they had acts on there? How big a deal was it?
It was massive. It was absolutely massive. I mean, especially with that first year. We had 5 bands on. So we had t-shirts that said like Roadrunner rules the Ozfest, and like Black Sabbath Master of Reality letters, so it was so huge that we were such a massive part of that show. Because you had your Pantera, like that year you had Pantera, you had Marilyn Manson, you had, I can't even remember half of the bands that were on that show, Jesus Christ. But you just had so many bands that were on there, and a lot of them were major label smallish bands. So we were the ones, I don't think there was any like Relapse bands on there. I highly doubt there was any Century Media bands, because they didn't have the money to buy their bands on. But especially after the Typo Negative thing happened, that was because that was such a big deal at the time. It really kind of blew the doors open for Roadrunner to kind of, not to be like, hey, we're here, like, our shit don't smell, but it was kind of like, it really kind of was like, hey, like Typo Negative is like the super big brother who's like, yeah, well, you know what, me and my other boys are coming in this thing too. And it's like, all right, cool, come on, guys. And everyone's kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of them. So, okay, cool, we'll let them in, But then following that year, was 98, which unfortunately I didn't get to see because they only did it on the East Coast and the Midwest, and I had moved to LA, so we didn't get that tour. But I mean, that was, Soulfly and all of these kind of new metal-y sort of bands kind of getting in on that. But again, it's like 97 was Cold Chamber, so it's like that was a whole new crowd, a new musical mentality that was starting to be very pervasive, you know, which ended up becoming nu metal, you know, and it started right there, you know. So you had Cold Chamber next to VOD, next to Machine Head, next to Fear Factory, you know. It was such a diverse, you know, kind of time for metal in that regard. And I think that was really what it was. And I you know, and nobody, you know, Ozfest had only happened as that one show in San Bernardino in like 96, you know, so the fact that we were able to kind of do a Lollapalooza for metal was such a huge deal in and of itself.
Is the interesting thing for me is like bands would, or labels rather, would pay on to Ozfest, right? Which sounds like, it sounds disingenuous, but if you think about it, it's just taking the booking function. So normally there's one person at a festival who goes, I think I know what the cutting edge here is. Here's my lineup. Let's try and book them. It completely inverts it and goes, let's make effectively a concert compilation of what's in vogue now. Who decides that? Whatever the labels want to push. And that whatever Ozfest lineup was any given year is presumably what the labels of the time thought.
That was their priorities.
Exactly. And I don't think people realize that. They just think it's like, oh, it's a money game. It's like, well, sure it is. It's a business. But if you got to look at it as a stand-in time for that year, and you got to understand that it's more of a showcase than anything else.
Right. Even think about it, right? 98 had Incubus, you know? They had Incubus, and Incubus was on Epic. You know, it's like, so, but people were still kind of like, okay, this Incubus band is okay. You know, now you would never think of Incubus even remotely being on Ozfest, you know, but it's like, but that was kind of it. It was all the priority bands, because if you were going to buy onto it, it was the ultimate investment, because unless you were on the main stage or the headliner of the second stage, you didn't get paid. You know, so you had to bring it every day. And that's what I would tell bands when I was on tour with them on Ozfest, was like, look, when you're on stage, there are no friends. You guys are all fighting for that same dollar. So you know, if you're bored right now, fucking walk through the crowd, man. Like, fucking start making some bands, grab some CDs and see if you can sell them by hand. Like, you know, you've got to make every dollar count. That's why, you know, in the later years, when you had like your Streetwise stage and all these kinds of things, you know, so many companies were giving money to Streetwise left, you know, just hand over fist. And Streetwise wasn't doing anything for them. They had no control over their street teamers. They had tons of product that never went anywhere. And in the end, what ended up happening, even though these labels were like, yeah, we're pushing this band, all this money would get used up, and no records would sell, you know. So that's kind of what led to the sort of implosion of all of that, of street teaming and everything like that, was just the fact that it went from being like, these are the bands we're pushing, these are the bands that mean something to us, that we are investing in heavily, you know. And if you're a Roadrunner, yeah, man, you got to make every dollar count, you know. So if Roadrunner's going to be putting Soulfly on it, yeah, we're putting our money, we're putting our attitude, we're putting our dedication, our passion, our livelihoods, like everything was on the line. Like, this wasn't some, you know, this wasn't just some baby band that we were just, you know, stuffing, you know, just kind of, just give them $80 million and just let them do whatever they want. You know, when it came to Roadrunner at that time, it was really just, you know, we had to make sure that everything worked properly. That's why that year with Slipknot, you know, it was they just gave 180% every show, that it became the thing of like, you know, any band that played after them was like, okay, so we got to really bring this shit. Like, you know, like, we were going to bring 100%. They brought 860%. So we got to figure something out, you know. And that was really what it was all about. Was just, it wasn't so much just a money game, but it was in a really weird way, it was the ultimate gambling, you know, because you're like, okay, it's $90,000 to get on the second stage, to buy your way on, and then you still need a tour bus. That's, let's just say $40,000-$50,000 for the summer. You still need, you know, all of these different things between merch and buying ads, you know, in every market that it's going to be, and buying radio spots in every market, and doing all this promotional stuff. You know, before you even hit the stage and play a note, you're already $500,000 in, you know? So it became this thing of like, hey, if you're going to do this, like, you gotta really push it. Like, you know, not everyone is Ozzy or Pantera or Marilyn Manson, where they were just kind of like, yeah, no, we'll just do whatever, and just gotta whatever. It's like, no, if you're Cold Chamber, like, you better be out in that crowd. You better be talking to people, like, you know. And I think that was the really important part about that. And that's why after Ozfest 99 with Slipknot, not that it changed the mentality or anything, but I think that was really when you saw it's almost like, you know, when you're running down a hill and then you realize your legs are moving way too fast and you can't really control them. Like, that's kind of what happened after Ozfest 99. It was like Roadrunner was like, holy shit, like this is crazy. And it was so much so fast that I think that people really didn't know. Not I don't want to say they didn't know how to handle it, but it really was. It was just so much so fast. And that, you know, that did lead to a lot of sort of bad things along the way. But at the same time, it really, you know, when people are like, oh, Nickelback saved Roadrunner, and I'm like, you know, you can't look at it like that. It's like, you know, if you want to look at it like that, then you could say Type O saved Roadrunner, and then Slipknot saved Roadrunner, and then Nickelback saved Roadrunner, and then Stone Sour, and then Killswitch. You know, if you're gonna say like, oh, they got saved, it's like, no, it's a multi, like we were saying, it's a fucking house. You know, you can't just you know, be like, well, the only reason you got this house is because of the bathroom. You know, it's like, no, there's all sorts of other things going on here that we need to fucking deal with.
Yeah. So if no one's seen any Ozfest footage, just fucking get on YouTube now. It's something special. And you got to remember, it's like, it's pre-internet and it's this was like your day. This is your day of the fucking year.
Yeah.
Like, I've got before the pandemic, I had like 3 days of the year where it's like, I don't have a phone, a wallet, or keys. I've only got my health. And then I just go off. And that's me pressing F5 and refreshing my tab for the year.
Right.
That's what Ozfest was.
Well, and also, you know, being a metal fan here, reading Kerrang, reading Metal Hammer, reading Enemy, and a lot of that stuff, you know, I could only dream about going to someplace like Download. You know, I could only dream about a festival like on that scale. You know, the only thing we really had was Lollapalooza and maybe Warped Tour, you know, but like when Ozfest came out, like that's when you're just like, you know, I remember talking to somebody in England, one of the people at Roadrunner England, they were just like, man, you're so lucky you get Ozfest. And I'm like, we're lucky. You guys have Download and Grass Pop and Vakken and but like to them they were like, no, you're the lucky one, you know. And that was nice, dude. Vakken is still a dream of mine, dude. I pray I can make it out there one day. Like me and my wife, we were actually in 2020. We were like, you know what? This is the year. This is the year we do it. This is the year we do it. And like, of course, like 2 months later, it's like, okay, or we don't do it ever. I
tell you fucking stories of Wacken. Like this is like 50
you know
years
what well. You know what I love? I love that there's a Vakken, not a documentary, but just like a little bit of a documentary on Amazon Prime. You know, and it's just like I watch it all the time just because I'm just like, you know, and I know so many people are like, oh yeah, no, I've gone, but like I've gotten to do like 70,000 tons of metal, the metal cruise. Yeah. And that was like, and it's funny because it's like when I do it, it's almost like I'm there with so many drunk Norwegians and drunk Canadians and drunk Swiss and drunk Swedes and drunk Italians and everyone's wearing just like their festival shirt. You know, so it's like, you know, the Germans are wearing their Vakken shirts and, you know, the Norwegians are wearing their festival shirts. And, you know, it's just, and you just look at it and everyone's just like, man, like you got to go to Ozfest 97. Like that's fucking crazy. And I'm like, dude, you got to see Maiden and Kiss on the same bill. Like, what are you talking about? You know, but it was like, that was the best part about it was just like, you know, just to be able to have people kind of weirdly be jealous of us having Ozfest. It was so bizarre back then.
Yeah.
You know?
So let's move forward a little bit.
Sure.
As you migrate into the Road Crew stuff. So let's really contextualize this, right? So
sure.
Road Crew as a function, I described it yesterday as you took the word of mouth function of metal and militarized it. That was the idea of a Road Crew.
I look at it like I kind of cultized it, you know, really weird. Kind of turned it into a really weird rogue cult.
Yeah. So what's the landscape of street teams at this point? Is it in vogue? Do all labels have them? Or is it still fairly innovative? How much is outsourced?
Okay, so great question. So basically when Streetwise came about, it created this street marketing deluge, if you will. So you had Streetwise, you had a company called Band Bitch, you had Loudside, and you had, yeah, I know, right? That was my friend John Nelson's company. And I was just realizing, I was like, really, dude, Band Bitch? And when people like street team would be like, I'm on Band Bitch, I'm like, oh, that's the worst name ever. But anyway, but they were the premier kind of ones that were out there. And because of the fact that they were premier, it was all you saw at the time.
Yeah.
And that's why so many labels and managers and everything became so obsessed with it. So when I was doing when I was tour coordinator, I would put these street teamers on our guest list. And the street team was basically run by the retail department. But the retail department already had their own job. Like, so somebody would just be like, hey, I'm a street teamer. Can I get tickets? They're like, yeah, here's tickets. And I'd be like, and I remember being like, A, I could use those tickets for somebody else. B, who the fuck is this kid? And C, I'm at these shows because I'm the tour coordinator. I'm there before the shows and after show. I don't see any of these kids doing anything. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of my thing. Was I was like, this. I feel like we're wasting our resources. We're making these resources. We're supposedly sending them out to people, and nobody's doing anything. And then we're on top of it, we're rewarding kids with tickets and VIP. And I'm like, why are we doing this? And I was very much into, the whole street team philosophy and the whole mentality of it, because I was always just on the ground. I was always the dude on the, I'm the guy in the pit. I'm the guy crowd surfing and stage diving. But then afterwards, I'm the dude who's got samplers in my cargo shorts pocket, and I'm outside like, hey, dude, here you go. And I would watch the way that these kids would street team, and they would just be like, here. And I'm like, really? Like, people are coming out of a Slayer show, and that's how you're responding to them? And I'd be like, hey, stupid, come here. Here, you look stupid, come here. Get this. Like, I would just say stuff like that and just kind of be, I mean, if you're an outsider looking in, it's probably obnoxious, but like, I was just like, like that's how you talk to people after a concert. After a Slayer show, people are deaf and they're stoned and they're drunk and they're full of adrenaline. Really?
There's a 5-second window where everyone's bottled.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
And that's when you can get them. But it's like, but if you're going to be like, whatever, I'm like, okay, like you're not, like, that's not how this is done. Mm-hmm. So I ended up writing a proposal to Case and Jonas and saying, like, look, dude, this is where I come from. This is my vibe. This is the thing that I can do. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, great. And I was like, awesome. We're going to build this up. And they're like, you're going out on Ozfest. And I'm like, what? Like, because that was not what I was expecting. I thought I was building up this street team. And they fucking threw me out. I'd never even been on a moving tour bus.
Wow. This is while you're doing the tour coordinator stuff as well.
Well, I just transitioned out of it. Okay. We found a new tour coordinator, and I transitioned out of it. But again, it's like this is also like, I mean, I'll never forget. I had a laptop that was like this big. I mean, it was like crazy, and like it was my first cell phone, and I didn't know anything about minutes and all that. So every time I'd get I'd have Roadrunner be like, dude, your bill was like $4,000. I'm like, I don't know. You guys are I'm calling people. Like, I don't know what to do. But back then it was like, you have this many minutes and you have this, it was so many different stipulations and regulations when it came to that. But then it was like, so yeah, they just thrust me out there. Mm-hmm. And so I was only able to get the very beginning of it started. And so what I did was like, hey, I'm going to be going around the country, meeting all the street teamers. Come and meet me here. I'm going to give you promo, and you're going to hand it out during the show. And that was basically what we did. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing was that my friend, who I said I had to tell her I wasn't going to do Ozfest with her. I ended up doing Ozfest with her because I ended up on the tour anyway. So like her booth was like my base of operations, and I also helped her sell stuff because I was, not for nothing, dude. It's like, well, you know what? You've seen Shovel once, you've seen him a fucking 1,000 times. You're just like, all right, cool. I'm just gonna hang out here and help you sell shirts, But it was like, but that was kind of it. So I went and I met fucking hundreds of street teamers, and we did meet and greets with Max, and it was really great. And so I got to meet and talk to a lot of these kids to see really what they were about. Yeah. And then when I got back to Roadrunner in September of that year, I looked at our list of people, and I'm like, we have 27,000 people on our street team. And the consensus there was like, well, Streetwise has 85,000 people on their street team. And I was like, let me ask you a question. How many people you think work at Streetwise? There's 8. You're going to tell me that 8 people can control 84,000 people out there? Mm-hmm. Really? So I'm like, I'm one person with 20, like, the publicist, she's got to deal with what, maybe 200 fucking journalists, radio stations. There's probably 200-300 at the time out there,
Additionally,
retail.
27,000, how many of those are actually effective?
Well, not only that, what do you do with, I mean, it was literally like herding cats, because you had everybody from every part of the country, every ethnicity, every gender, everything, and they're all asking you for shit all at the same time. And it got to the point where I was like, every day I'd like almost have like a panic attack and be under my desk, because I'm just like, oh my God. Like, and so I came to the conclusion, I was like, you know what? Fuck what Streetwise has. This is stupid. I'm one person. But the back end that Roadrunner built me was phenomenal. It was like the greatest thing in the world. I could do 15 different things with one click, kind of thing. And it was really amazing the way that they had set it up. And I will forever be grateful for that system, and jealous at the same time, because I was never able to recreate it. But it was like, so what I did was I completely destroyed the team, and I put it down to 0. I deleted everybody. And what I did was before I did that, I said, I'm deleting this whole team. If you want to be on this team, you better write to me and let me know why you want to be on this fucking team.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And so I got all these emails from people, and there were some people like, I just want to get into shows. All right, delete. But then I'd get people who are like, I'm taking music business classes in college, and I think this is a great thing, and I fucking love Fear Factory, I love Machine Head, and I'll do anything for them. And I'm like, put that in the keep pile, And I ended up with 500 street teamers who were fucking, for the most part, solid. Obviously, like I had, along the way, you kind of find out if people really have it or if they're just, bullshitting you, But I'll tell you something. It's 2021. I probably still contact, or at least are in contact with, almost half of my kids.
Wow.
Still to this day. I've been there for the birth of their babies, for the birth of their children. I've been there for their weddings. I've been there for, graduations. I've been there for all sorts of things that they've done. Awesome. Me and my wife, we took a cross country trip 2 Christmases ago, and just along the way, that's all we did was just, all right, cool. We're stopping in Dallas. We're going to see Chelsea. All right, we're stopping in Louisiana. We're going to see Rika. We're stopping here. We're going to see DJ. Like everywhere I go, I pretty much have people everywhere, and I love my kids.
2 things I want to stop and analyze a little bit.
Sure.
Has Metal Blade got their street team at this point? Is there a brand? Is it still Streetwise, or is Roadrunner innovating here and trying to break the mold a bit?
Okay, good question. So basically, what happened was Streetwise was making money hand over fist, and what they were doing was sending out these reports that were like this thick, and they were just full of bullshit. It was all crap, and I knew it was crap, but I just couldn't prove that it was crap. Not until I actually worked there in 2003. And then I was like, oh, that's why it's shitty. Because what they would do is they would find like 5 kids and have them, those 5 kids would send 200 pictures in. And, if you go to, I don't know how it is with festivals out there, but, at Ozfest, you go to one Ozfest, it looks like every other Ozfest. It's an amphitheater in the middle of nowhere. And so if you see one person holding up a postcard, okay, cool. Like that guy's just there. But what they would do is they would take that one kid's 200 pictures and be like, okay, these 20 are Dallas, and these 20 are going to be Massachusetts, and these 20 are going to be. So they basically were just kind of fluffing it all up, and it was all horseshit. And
so they're just faking the proof that they were doing
completely faking it.
And that was their model. They'd say, all right, whatever label, give us presumably an account of a certain amount of subscription, let's say a year. We'll push this. We're going to send out 100,000 flyers on all this on this tour, and here's how we prove it. We sent pictures of our guys doing it, and it was just all horseshit. Right.
It was all bullshit. And so, and for me, I was like, I need to prove that we're doing what we're doing. And that's why I handpicked all those kids that we had, because they were ones who were like, I'm sending you pictures. I'm sending you this. I'm sending you that. Actually, sorry, just a real weird thing. My Albuquerque guy, who I haven't talked to since I was doing the street team, and he was awesome. He was just one of those dudes who kind of faded out and everything, literally like sent me a package of Breaking Bad stuff from Albuquerque. And he was like, dude, I miss you, bro. And thanks for everything. And I was like, oh, okay, like holy shit, like 20 years later, like I'm getting a package of Breaking Bad swag and a thank you card, and I'm like, holy fucking shit, but that was kind of it. So my whole thing was, they're not teaching their kids what to do. They're sending them stuff and they're assuming that they know what to do. And if you're a kid in the Midwest, what the fuck do you know about a guest list? What do you know about marketing? What the hell do you get a stack of stickers in your hand? You're like, all right, cool. Give a couple out to people at school, like that's okay. So my whole thing was, we don't have a huge budget, so everything we have has to get in the hands of people who matter.
Yeah.
You know, don't give it to Grandpa Joe. Don't give it to the homeless guy. Don't give it to, you know, like you find those people. And I would tell them, like, if there's more than 5 people street teaming at an event, leave or go someplace else. If you're in New York and there, you know, Slipknot's playing at some huge place and you realize there's just too many street teamers out there, it's just a huge glut, you guys go to Penn Station, you guys go to Port Authority, you guys go to Grand Central. And while these people are waiting, that's when you give it to them. You know, so it was about teaching them strategy. It was about teaching them marketing. The funniest part is that, you know, my nickname became the Brown Satan because I just wore Satan shirts all the time. And then I ended up getting it tattooed on my arm too. So, but like I would have to field phone calls from parents who are like, okay, who is the Brown Satan? Why won't my kid stop fucking talking about him? And what the hell is going on? And I'd have to be like, okay, like here's what's happening. You know, here's what I do. Here's blah, blah, blah. But like I had parents that were like, they invite me over for dinner. You know, I had one kid in New Jersey, his mom called me up and she's like, dude, all he wants to do is street team. He's failing English. He's da-da-da-da, like all, and I was like, put him on the phone. And they were like terrified of me, you know, because I was this kind of weird, larger than life kind of person to them. Like I was this guy on the end of the email, on the end of the phone. And I'd be like, hey, is this Wes? And he'd be like, yeah. I'm like, Wes, it's Ro from Roadrunner. And you just hear like him like, you know, like it was like 14, I think, 13, 14, something like that. And I was like, your mom's telling me you're failing English. And he's like, well, my English teacher sucks. I'm like, dude, I don't fucking care. I'm like, I don't need dumb people on my team. And if you're going to fail the primary language of this country, I don't want you on my team. You're going on inactive. That's the way it is until you bring your fucking grades up. And I talked to his mom, like, all right, I'm putting him on inactive. He's got to bring his grades up or else he's not going to come back on. And she was like, thank you so much. And then Fear Factory ended up doing a signing and he showed up with his mom and he got a straight A's and had Fear Factory sign his report card. And his mom was like, anything you want, like, no problem. And I was just like, all right, cool. Like, that's awesome. And ironically enough, I went and did a heavy metal convention in Portland, Oregon in 2018. And this dude comes up to my thing and he's like, you know who I am? And I'm like, no. He goes, I'm Wes. And I was like, and we used to call him the illest Nino because he was so tiny. He was so young. And I was like, holy crap. He was like DJing at a strip club in Portland, Oregon. I was like, oh my God. Like, gave him like the biggest hug though. But I was just like, this is like insane. But that was what I loved about my street team was that they were all, I used to call them all my kids, but really what they were was all my little brothers and sisters, you know? And I knew that, you know, if you're in Arkansas, and like I have a buddy he was one of my teamers and he's bald head, black dreads coming out of a top knot. You know what? In Arkansas, 2021 or 2000 still doesn't really go over very well out there, you know, but you know, his, you know, families and school people and all, you know, bullies and jocks, you know, and they're all telling you that you're not going to be anything and fuck you, you're a fucking loser and da da da. And I was the guy who was like, not here, like, come on in, you know, and, you know, so I accepted all of those people and they were all just littler versions of me in some way, shape or form. You know, I mean, I'm a fucking Indian metalhead from New Jersey. Like I'm an Indian metalhead from New Jersey who likes Kiss and Star Wars. Really? Like I might as well have been gay and, you know, transsexual at the same time. Like how much more of a niche could I have thrown myself into? But that's what I realized is that, you know, you got kids in Florida, you got kids in Texas, you got kids in Maine and you know, Oregon and all these kinds of things. And they all have issues. And I became this big brother to them. They were like contacting me like, dude, what do I do about my parents? Yeah, you know, I'm failing this class. And so it's like, I just became this weird metal guidance counselor for all of them. And, you know, I like I said, it's like, I love them and I love them. Like they're like my extended family to this day, you know? And I mean, I left in 2003 and, you know, I just, you know, I'm seeing when I go to the East Coast and next week, I'm seeing like 9 of them when I go out there, you know? So it's like, I still help them out. I still support them. Some of them work at companies that have hired War Machine to make their stuff. One of my girls she was my Nebraska girl. Now she lives in Dallas. The company she works for orders so much stuff for me that there's been 2 years where they literally kept War Machine afloat. And, you know, like wow. And if that's her thank you to me, then awesome, but like I can't thank her enough for what she did, so things like that. Like I still deal with all these kids, and that was always the prevailing thing, was like I just want to teach them that what we're doing, we're not just handing shit out, we're marketing, we're developing a skill. We're trying to marketing. My PR and marketing teacher used to tell me, PR and marketing is about convincing people that chicken shit is chicken salad. And that's what I always told them, is like, don't just think that you can just put a stack of flyers on a counter and be like, later. That's not going to do anything, So I would have them, like they'd get the CD samplers, they'd slit open the CD sampler and then put the stickers and the flyers and everything inside and make like a little pack. So when they'd go to the shows, It was like ba-boom, 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 and stuff like that. Like as they started kind of getting into that vibe, they started doing their own stuff and, kind of mixing it up and having listening parties and doing all these kinds of things. And it really did. It blew up in such a weird way. I'd have bands like Lamb of God and Shadows Fall, and just like, dude, all we do is see your fucking street teamers everywhere. And I'm like, that's what they're there for,
It's interesting, the transition from 20,000 to let's hit it to 0 and just like put a vetting process in. The integrity that's sort of part of that process and trying to make it more about development, it's something that is so on brand for Roadrunner, I'm finding. Right. Every time, that's what Case wants. He wants his guys developing their own skill sets so they can be better Roadrunner people. Right. And it looks like you kind of copy and pasted the mentality down. And at the same time, it's also good for indie cred, because even though Roadrunner's got Slipknot and Nickelback and it's just been fucking bought by Universal, there's still a very ground level entry point. Right. And I think that's a thing that there's something I need to unpack there,
Yeah, the only thing that's sort of sucked about the Universal thing was that we were bought by Island Def Jam, which is distributed by Universal. But but it was just that they had their own street team, but they had so much like liquid cash to just throw at things, whereas we still didn't. We had our stuff and we could make our stuff, but like they like bought their team like a ice cream truck to drive around and like different concerts, and I'm like, yeah, I don't have that. I don't have an ice cream truck. Sorry, man. Everyone's got to fucking get there how they get there. I got to the point where we were using retail posters at the concerts, and then kids would take the retail posters down, and it was starting to piss off the bands because they were like, we don't see any posters hung up. And I'm like, yeah, because first 10 people come in, they take the posters down, and that's it. So we came up with this idea of, I came up with this idea, if you will, of doing like newspaper print posters, because I was like, just less valuable. We can make more for less, and the odds of somebody taking them down are a little bit slimmer. But like Island Def Jam's team would be like, oh, like nice posters, and I'm like, you know what, well, fuck off, dude. Like, sorry, man. Sorry, I don't have a Mercedes fucking ice cream truck I get to drive in. Like, all right, we got to fucking save our nickels and dimes and make shit happen, And then that was kind of that was sort of what started happening, was you had like Streetwise and Island and Epic, and everybody had their street teams, and it became such a glut because you would go to a concert and people started to look for alternate exits so they didn't have to deal with street teamers. Because all that would happen was people would walk out with a stack of stuff, and the first place they would go is a garbage can. And that was it. And I was like, okay, this is pointless. If all my shit is just going to end up in the garbage, this is fucking pointless. So we have to come up with a new strategy. We have to come up with a strategy because, okay, cool. Like I'll have 2 kids handing stuff out at the end of the concert. Like I said, like you go somewhere else, you go somewhere else. But if it's going to be you guys and Streetwise and Bam Bitch and Epic and Island, who's going to care? Nobody's going to care at that point. The cool thing about it back in the day when Streetwise first started was these people felt lucky to get a System of a Down tape or get a Static X tape. They felt lucky to do that. Yeah. But now with everybody doing it, it's what I always say. It's like when everyone's special, nobody's special.
Yeah.
And that was the vibe that started really happening, was everybody was just getting so glutted constantly. And it just got to the point where people would do like radio campaigns. They'd be like, okay, tell your street team to call into, this radio station. And the radio stations are like, yeah, we know you're doing this because 900 people just called asking about Slipknot. So knock it off, So it kind of sort of backfired in certain cases. And that's why I always had to like kind of, to me, that was sort of the strong point of doing the road crew, was I could go back off of this.
Yeah,
Whereas Streetwise and all of them, they were just, to me, they were kind of trying to kill a housefly with a sledgehammer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you might get it, but you're also going to wreck shit in the process. Whereas for me, I was kind of like, okay, rather than do that, let's take a step back. And instead of hitting that show where there's 15 people or, you know, street teaming, go to your mall, wear your cargo pants, have your backpack, and just hand out single CDs to people randomly.
Yeah.
You know,
Don't join the saturation.
Exactly.
A little bit separate, because then
That's kind of
you
it.
associate it with a positive experience as opposed to a.
Exactly. And that was exactly it. So this way, especially, you know, if you have some teenager, and especially back then in 2000, 2001, you know, what did they have? They had CD Walkmans, you know, or cassette Walkmans.
Sure.
Or, you know, and so it became this thing of like, okay, like I just happened to be at the mall and suddenly this dude handed me a Roadrunner CD that's got 16 songs on it. And holy shit, these bands are awesome. You know, that's a much better experience than like, oh God, more street team. You know,
I gotta get to the car. I got all this shit. Yeah.
Right. You know, and the amount of people that would just, like I said, I'll never forget walking out of a show at the Palace. I think it was Snot and Soulfly. And it's just like literally they were just kind of like, okay. And the first thing I saw was them just go right to a trash can. And I was like, yeah, this is, we got to figure this out, you know, because again, every one of those CD samplers or cassette samplers that didn't make its way into the right hands is a wasted opportunity. You know, and I would tell my kids that too. Like, if you have extra shit in your, that's how I used to call my teamers too. Was like, hey, who's got extra shit? Dude, I got tons of shit. Great, you're off the team. You know, like, because if you're gonna bitch and moan about Spine Shank not coming to your town, and you have a fucking closet full of Spine Shank tapes, yeah, there's a reason they're not coming to your town, you moron. You know, so that was my way of finding out like who's hoarding stuff, who wasn't. Yeah. You know, because if and it was always my top kids were just like, no, dude, like I need more because I'm doing a pizza party and I'm doing this and then I'm going here and then I'm doing, you know, and those were the people I always knew like, all right, cool, like those are the people I can count on. So they became like my road crew alpha, as I used to call them, because they were the ones who, you know, when somebody was like, hey, I'm on the the internet street team, the E team, can I be on the street team? I'd be like, well, you're in Columbus, Ohio. You've got to hook up with Christina Barnhill, and she's got to take you under her wing, and then she's got to be the one to tell me when you're ready. You know, so it became this thing of like, you don't just fill out a form and then suddenly you're on the team. That's not how this shit works. Like you're on my team, then you got to be, you know, kind of promoted and what's the word I'm looking for? Like recommended. You know, you got to be recommended and referred by somebody who's on my alpha team. You know, and they believe in you, then I believe in you. They're my eyes and ears. That's what it needs. That's what it takes. You
alluded to before was the back end. So what infrastructure is there that's supporting you? Because this is another interesting thing about Roadrunner is like Case is almost adamant that there has to be technological resilience backing all this stuff up. They're like one of the first label that had a computer in their office in the Amsterdam one in the mid-'80s and there's shit like that all the time.
Right.
So I'm interested in, because I've never heard what they had in that office.
To be honest with you, so they developed it while I was on Ozfest. And so when I kind of got back from Ozfest was when I was like kind of beta testing it, you know, and it just allowed me again to do so much all at once. So
it's like an intranet or something like that.
Yeah, it was an intranet. That's exactly
right.
What it was.
Okay.
Yeah. So what it allowed me to do is I could look at, I'm just going to give you a weird example, but like I could look at, okay, I need to see who's going through Ohio. Okay, cool. These 8 bands are going through Ohio in the next 5 weeks. Okay. So I could click on each one of those Ohio dates and it would automatically email everybody in that region. And then I would send one letter and say, hey, here are the tour dates coming up. Whoever wants in, email me at tickets@Roadrunner, and, you know, first come, first serve. And, you know, but then they would have to write their reports on the Roadrunner site too. So that came up too. And then, like I said, it was brilliant because they were like, if let's just say I assigned them 5 concert reports for the concerts I hooked them up for, and they only did 2 reports, it would show me what the percentage of undone reports is versus what they were supposed to do. And so I could literally go, sorry, dude, you're not going in. You haven't finished 5 reports and I hooked you up a bunch of times. Like, so what the fuck? And that helped me really figure out who was good, who was not, who could write reports, because that back then too, it's like, no different than it is today with like millennials and their own kind of weird sort of language. Back then everything was instant messenger language.
Mm-hmm.
So you had certain kids where it's like their reports were like LOL, LMAO, and da da da, and I was just like, I can't send this to a manager. Like, they're gonna think my kids are retarded, So I was like, what I started doing also was kind of finding out like which kids were good at it and which ones weren't.
Right.
And then the ones that weren't, I'd go, okay, you're obviously into this, you just suck at doing reports. So what I would do is I'd go, okay, here's a stack of stickers. Your job is to fucking put these stickers all over New York.
Mm-hmm.
I want pictures of every goddamn sticker. If I give you 200 stickers and I don't get 200 photos, you're not getting anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So they just became like my sticker team kind of thing, So I would have to send people on very specific sort of missions that were tailored to their strengths.
Sure.
As opposed to punishing them for their weaknesses, and because again, like, some of these kids are inner city kids, they're, they have abusive parents or whatever. So it's like, their life is now on, starting to be on the internet all the time.
Yeah.
And they're talking to all these other kids in different chat rooms and all these kinds of stuff, and so they might be great on the internet, but then when you meet them, they're like, hey. And I'm like, dude, like, you wouldn't shut up on Instant Messenger the other day, and I meet you now and you're like, I'm like, what the fuck, where did that come from? So, I had to really kind of see who was good at what who was good at what. And then, like I said, just sort of tailor it towards what they could do and what they could provide to me. And then I could go, okay, cool. Like, I will reward you this way.
It's interesting, just like the attention to detail. Whereas, as we were saying before, the other labels, it appeared to be just throw some fucking money at it, just get in everyone's face.
That was really what it was. Like I said, it was the using a sledgehammer to kill a fly. Yeah. You're just trying to just get this thing, but you're just, you might get it, but you're gonna just waste so much time and energy and everything just trying to do this one thing. I'll never forget. I was going to a concert, and my girlfriend at the time, she would help me street team every once in a while. But I saw this kid from the Island Def Jam team, and he had Primer 55 stickers, and he just took the stickers, put them on the ground, and then kicked them so that they all just went fluttering everywhere. And she had to like hold me back. She's like, he's not one of your kids. I'm like, no, he's gotta die. Like, you don't do that to people shit, and it's like, I always have to like really be careful with stuff like that, because, I'd see other kids wasting the band's stuff. And that was the other thing too, is that kids kept thinking, record companies are these bottomless pits of money. They're getting free CDs and free, stickers in the mail. They're free. Mm-hmm. But they never thought to themselves that the band has to pay for these. Yeah. To them, their perspective was always, big record company, big money, da 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 da, and I had to show them like, yo, every time you don't do this the right way, you're using up the band's money, and that's one less thing that they can do. That's one less concert they can play. That's one less place they're going to go to. That's one less tank of gas they have to get to the next place, Yeah. And that was really what it was like, I had to really educate them on what they're doing and why what they're doing is really important, and how, because even once Nickelback came into the play, obviously I had I had Deicide kids, and I had Slipknot kids and Fear Factory kids, and a lot of them were like, fuck Nickelback, that's not my thing. And I was like, look, the street team is about, focusing on the bands that you like. You want to be on the Machine Head team, then I send you Machine Head stuff, you hand that out. But I said, but the thing about marketing is that when it comes to marketing, it's not our job to like it or not like it. It's our job to make people excited about it. Mm-hmm. So maybe you don't like Nickelback. I get it. Don't get me wrong. Not my favorite thing in the world. Okay. But my job is still to promote it and make it happen. And so a lot of my kids, so I was like, so I'd have to ask a lot of my kids, like, hey, can you do me a favor and just work this Nickelback show? And they'd be like, okay, fine. But then they would meet the band, and then the band would treat them really well. Mm-hmm. And then next thing you know, they're like, dude, I totally want to work that next Nickelback show. So it was the idea of like, giving them the option, but also being like, hey, and if you don't like it, just like the whole Rise of Skywalker thing, if you don't like it, that's not a problem. Yeah. But if you can work it and get other people excited about it, it's not going to reflect on you like suddenly you're some a poser, kind of thing, where you're like doing something you shouldn't really be doing. It's like, no, you're doing marketing, and that's what marketing is about, is getting people excited about what you're working on.
Are Case and Jonas getting involved? Are you reporting it to them? Are they giving a shit about the progress of the street team?
Yes and no. I'll never forget when Jonas was like, your street teamers didn't even hand me anything. I'm like, yeah, you're not. I told them specifically not to hand stuff to you because you don't look like a metalhead. You look like somebody's dad. You look like somebody's grandfather. Like, you're exactly who I tell them not to hand shit to, because you look like the guy that this is going to end up in the garbage. And I remember him be like, oh yeah, like I kind of guess so, and I was like, yeah, but what ended up happening, I think, from my perspective, of course, is that there was a level of apathy that was starting to really set in, and it became this kind of like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, or same thing. Like, I wasn't really dealing with professionals. I was dealing with children, and because of that, it reflected on like kind of the way that they looked at me. Like, oh, like we hired a child to work with children kind of thing. Because I was out there in the trenches, I was handing stuff out. I was still crowd surfing and stage diving and moshing and, so I was still doing all the things that the fans did. And so I think it got to a point where, the street team just became this sort of thing that was out there. It was really weird though, because I had a strange kind of carte blanche though, that I wish I'd understood back then. Like, oh, I can almost do anything because nobody's looking at me, But when they started sort of taking money away from my projects and my bands and being like, no, we got to feed the Nickelback machine. That's when I started kind of being like, look, dude, like, like we put out Hell Alive by Machine Head, and I was like, all right, what do I get? And they're like, nothing. Like, we don't really have money to do anything with this. And I'm like, okay, like I have street teamers and Machine Head's going out on tour. Like we need something. And I remember they were like, okay, you have like $500 here. And I'm like, okay, like there's 300 million people in America. You're giving me $500 for a nationwide street team. So I was like, what am I going to do? So I called a buddy of mine at Dunlop Guitar Picks. And I was like, dude, how much are guitar picks? And so I told him my situation. And he goes, look, for every bag of guitar picks you buy, we'll buy 2 bags. And so for $500, I got like 15,000 fucking guitar picks, and my kids were ecstatic because people love guitar picks. And, sometimes the bands the Murder Dolls would use the guitar picks on stage, it was, but I think it sort of, again, just my perspective, but I think it like pissed people at Roadrunner off. They were just kind of like, well, we didn't want him to do that, like it was almost like it in a weird way. I feel like this, and again, this is just a general after the war thing, but it's like, I wonder if it was the type of thing where they were kind of like, well, we don't want to show a band like Machine Head that we really care that much about this record. And if they have kids that are doing it and kids that are excited about working the record, they're going to come back and be like, okay, so these people are all excited about working the record. How come we're not going to radio? How come we don't have more retail stuff?
Sure.
So I wonder if, again, that's a conjecture.
Hindsight 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And conjecture, because I don't know what they were thinking, but it was definitely the vibe I got, was that it was kind of like, oh, like he figured out something, like he found a loophole kind of thing. But again, it's like, that's why I ended up leaving, because I felt like I was just kind of getting pushed more and more into the shadow and more into the corner and more into the corner. And it got to the point where I was just kind of like, like I remember we were in a marketing meeting. They're like, oh, so what are you guys doing in LA? Just going to the beach? And I'm like, dude, I come to work at 9:30 a.m. and I leave at 2 a.m. Like, my relationship is suffering. I'm going to concerts every single night because we were right on the Sunset Strip. So I could go to any show. I'm like, I don't get home until like 1 or 2 a.m. And then I come to work the next day. And it was just kind of like that idea of, like, that's what you think we're doing, and then that became more of my reasoning for like leaving. And to this day,
do you end up working in the LA office then?
Yes. Yeah. So basically I had been petitioning for a long time to get moved to the LA office. And finally, after, I think it was in 2001, they were like, okay, we're going to let you go. And I was like, all right, great. So I went out there, I found an apartment, all this stuff. And then I flew back, and it was September 9th, 2001.
Uh-oh.
Guess what happened 2 days later?
Nickelback Silver Side Up came out.
Yeah, so did God Hits Us All by Slayer. So yeah, so 9/11 happened, and I had to put all of those plans on hold, because we couldn't leave the city, we couldn't leave, we couldn't do anything. Everything was turmoil and chaos and everything, and so I ended up leaving at the end of 2001. And so I got to LA. Me and my girlfriend drove cross country, got to LA in 2002, and then I just kind of started there. But what I didn't realize was that it became sort of a self-imposed exile for me. I felt like, because like when I was in New York, my street teamers would show up, they would make signs in our lobby, they were just always present. So there was this always ever present, it was almost kind of like it was always in motion. Everything was always in motion. There's always kids coming, me giving them CD samplers, go out there, go do your thing, et cetera, et cetera. And people saw that, and it was always like, wow, like bro's doing this, da da da. But when I left, that went away. And I didn't realize that at the time, that it was kind of, the lack of me being there became this like, oh, is Ro even really doing his job kind of thing. At least that was, like I said, that was a vibe I got, and then it also became like, oh, you're in LA, like, so you're just fucking being lazy. And I'm like, not really, and so that's like I said, that's where I started getting disenfranchised and everything like that, but it's not like I didn't blame Nickelback ever for that. Those guys are super good dudes. They know how to write a goddamn song, that's for sure, but they treated my kids really, really well. They always treated my kids, and that's something I will always forever be grateful for. It's easy when you do blow up the way they did to just be like, oh, street teamers, meh, but they always were like, nah, come on in, man. You guys, are you guys of age? Can you guys drink? All right, cool. Here's a beer. Like they always treated my kids super, super well. And that's, that was something I could never be like, stupid Nickelback. I'm like, no, they were still cool. And they had no control over the fact that, money was coming out of my budget and going into their, like, it's not like Chad was just like, street team, we don't need that. Like, I don't think he was doing that, So it's like, I've never had any animosity towards those guys. They definitely don't deserve the hate that they get. That is for fucking sure.
It's so illuminating though, dude. I knew there was something about the street team, man. I knew there's something there which is like really resonant with the way that the blood ran through that fucking company. And it's like, you've really sort of emphasize some of those bits. Do you have any regrets then of your time at Roadrunner?
I do, plenty.
Sure.
One of my regrets is when I left Roadrunner when I was interning in '98. That's one of my regrets. I left I left very prematurely. I had a girlfriend out in Los Angeles. I was super excited to be with her, and so right after I graduated college, I moved right out there. It was like May of '98, and I knew I should have waited until the fall, and I didn't. And I think that really fucked me, because I didn't, I feel like if I had left in the fall, I would have had one more Ozfest under my belt, being '98. And I think I would have solidified myself a little bit better, so that coming out to LA would have been a different story. However, if that happened, then I wouldn't have started the road crew. So, there's that. The only other regret I really have is leaving when I left, because I felt like I left I kind of was like, all right, family, like I'm going on to bigger and better things. And some of them came with me to Streetwise and some of the other places that I went, like Century Media, but in a lot of ways it was, none of the places I went to, I thought like Streetwise was going to be this super step up for me. Like this next evolution is working at this big company. And when I went there and I saw that it was just smoke and mirrors and like a Hollywood backdrop, basically like Blazing Saddles, you could just push over the fucking wall and just, and that's when I that was when I really felt that pang of regret, where I was like, fuck, I really thought I was moving to something bigger and better. And it was just this hokey, phony baloney bullshit kind of thing. And that was really my big thing. I did work on the Roadrunner United concert.
Oh, really?
And I worked on that. I did production on that. Which was, and it's funny too, because they were like, no, we're not doing a DVD. We're not doing a DVD. We're not doing, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. All right. But I was there for all the rehearsals and everything. So I have tons of footage that never made it onto this DVD. And the next thing you know, they're like, oh, here's the DVD. And I'm like, I have so much shit. Like I have Joey Jordison. I have video of Joey Jordison watching Roy Mayorga play Spit It Out. Like no one's ever going to see that shit, And I was just like, I have so much. And they're like, oh, why didn't you tell us? And I'm like, because you guys told me that you weren't doing anything with it. So why the fuck would I do it? So yeah, so it was that was definitely my regret. And then you know, I was trying really hard to get back into Roadrunner after a while because I was so disenfranchised with Streetwise and with Century Media and all these places. And when I went back there, I talked to my old boss, and he was like, "All right, send me a resume." And I'm like, "You want me to send you my resume? Like, are you fucking kidding me, dude?" And you know, and it was just like that kind of thing that like hit me really hard, where I was just like, "Fuck, man!" Like, you know. But it you know, again, it's all hindsight stuff, you know. But it was those things that sort of hurt at the, you know, at the time, because especially if I was really suffering and kind of being like, "Fuck, I really need a job. I really need a job." And Roadrunner has no more street team guy. I'm right here. I know what I'm doing. You know, I know this. And you know, when they're like, "Well, send us your resume," I was like, wow, that's a fucking slap in the face.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure if I brought that up to my old boss, he would have been like, "I didn't say that." And I'm like, "We were walking down 14th Street, motherfuckers. Like, I know where we were when you said that." And I stopped in my tracks, and I was like, "Are you fucking joking?" You know. So those are my regrets. I mean, you know, now I have so much more experience, obviously. So there's so much I kind of wish I wish I just sort of played my hand better. I guess in a weird way. I would liken
Easy
myself
to say
to
now, though, isn't it? Easy.
Yeah, but I would liken myself to a very inexperienced poker player.
Yeah,
that's really the way it is, you know, where it's almost like I showed my hand too quickly at times. I didn't hold back when I should have held back, you know, and also I was filled with so much. I mean, my AOL screen name was Angry Brown Satan, so it's like I was just constantly. I always felt like we were such underdogs at this company, and my kids were such underdogs in their lives, that to be sort of treated the way I felt like I was being treated just felt so like I just wanted to punch something, you know, and so it's like I constantly let my anger and bitterness kind of get the better of me in a lot of ways. But I mean, like, you know, but then there were certain things that like are I don't want to say timeless, because that's a fucking arrogant way to put it. But for my life, are timeless. Like that Roadrunner Wrath of Ro CD. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
If you have your internet open, look up Wrath of Ro CD right now.
Okay, let's fucking do it.
Actually, I got to write a post about it, because that CD is now 20 years old.
Dude, send it to Monty, because he does those weekend CD cover things, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does all those. Yeah, the cover stuff is really cool.
What?
Yeah. So that was our sampler for the summer of 2001, and we made 100,000 of those, and we gave those out everywhere. I had people coming up to me going, "Dude, I got this in Alaska," you know, and I'm like, "Holy shit!" I mean, walking down the street, I've had so many people at places like Ozfest and Knotfest, just like, "I have a CD with you on it." You're like, "Fucking God dang it!"
They are leaning into the Indian heritage big.
Well, that was me. That was me. I did that. Well, okay. So I have two stories with this. So the number one thing is that I am Indian, and my parents are super old school, very religious. Mm-hmm. So it was a little bit of a jab to them, you know. My assistant at the time was, I mean, this is like literally the beginning of the green screen. We had green construction paper behind. That's literally what we had.
Okay.
And then that picture is a picture I took on Ozfest in Idaho at a show. And so it was me just like floating there and holding, you know, each thing. And he kind of knew basic Photoshop kind of thing back then. And that's what we made. But the other thing that happened that year was Sepultura came out with, is it Against? Oh God, I can't believe I can't remember.
I think so, for 2001.
Was that 2001? Was it Against?
I'm pretty sure.
Shit, no, I'm fucking totally blanking.
I can check.
So I got my dad on that record. Nation, thank you. So I got my dad on that record. So Andreas, this is kind of a funny story and just totally on the side for everything. But Andreas and Igor came up to me and they're like, "Hey, Ro, they said you're Indian. Do you speak Hindi?" And I said, "No, I don't, but my parents do." And they said, "Well, we have this Gandhi quote that we just want translated into Hindi so we can use it on the record. Do you think he would mind?" "No, I don't see why not. Like, he speaks Hindi all the time. I can't understand it, but I'm sure he'll be game." So so they gave me a portable DAT player. So great story. I love the story. They gave me a portable DAT player. And so I go home and I was like, "Hey, Dad, one of my bands wants to record you saying this line in Hindi." And the first thing goes, "I'm not doing the cocaine." And I was like, Wait, what? What the hell are you talking about? What do you mean cocaine? What the fuck are you talking about? He goes, the band, they go to the studio and they do the cocaine. I'm not doing the cocaine. And I'm like, no, dude, like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, we're just going to do it in the living room. And then out comes my mom from the kitchen, and she's very like short, squat, fat Indian lady. And she comes out with a rolling pin. She's like, he's not doing the cocaine. I'm like, are you people fucking out of your minds? What is wrong with you? So anyway, so my dad does the line, it's the be the change you want to see in the world,
right,
quote from Gandhi. And so he translates it, does it in the DAT recorder like 7 or 8 times. And that was that. And so I give it to Roadrunner, and that's it. And now when somebody appears on a record, so let's just say a friend appears on a friend's record, and they're like, I don't need to get paid. They still have to sign off a waiver, like a release form. And it basically says that they're going to get paid $1 for their contribution. And it's just a formality. It's a throwaway thing. Nobody really cares.
It makes it a transaction, not a favor. And then it is, I've got to have one.
Exactly. So I bring it to my dad to sign, and he reads it, and he like scrutinizes every line, and he's like, $1 insult. And I'm like, are you gonna seriously push my band's record back because you're insulted? Like, this is just a formality. You refuse to fucking sign it. So I had to go back to Roadrunner and be like, can you just give him like $100, please? And they cut him a check for $100. And basically my dad is a Roadrunner Records recording artist.
That is fucking batshit.
And so after track 7 on Nation is my dad saying the quote, and he's thanked in the record, and he's in the liner notes. And so that year when we did the whole thing, I was like, oh, that would be just a really funny jab. And then if you look at the cover, the t-shirt I'm wearing, it says enjoy Satan, but it's in Coca-Cola letters.
Yes.
So it was just a total jab at him and at the whole thing. And it was so silly. That year was so goofy. But yeah,
I'm going to put this up on the intro to the podcast, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite stories. Is just I was like, because at the time I was like, did I mention cocaine? Like, I don't even remember. When would I have said cocaine? Like, but that was the first thing that came out of his mouth. I'm not doing this cocaine. I'm like, what? So yeah, so it's like, even though I have my regrets about Roadrunner, I had. Some people were like, oh, you put the row in Roadrunner, and I'm like, that's the greatest thing anybody could ever say to me, but it was I almost got a Roadrunner tattoo because I was like, dude, I'm a lifer, I want to be here forever,
Dude, last night I watched you on a podcast. I think it was Talk to Me. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, Talk to Me.
Yes,
Josh Toomey.
A Roadrunner mug.
Oh yeah.
Is it to hand? The only reason I'm asking is because Mark Everson had the exact same one when I spoke to him yesterday, and I think we should just do like, if you've got the Roadrunner mug, you got to show.
Yeah, I think it's downstairs or something, and I think it's just downstairs in my mug cabinet. Yeah, I mean, I'm game. And the cool thing about even with War Machine was that for the Golden Gods, I got to make Roadrunner matches and ashtrays. For Golden Gods, so it's like, so it was just cool to still be able to do stuff for them, do stuff with them, and that's, I mean, and seriously, it's like that touring experience being on Ozfest, that was the most insane, crazy shit that I've ever had to deal with. I have stories from that tour like you can't imagine. We almost got arrested at the Canadian border. I met a guy who had tattoos all over him of just people getting fucked in the ass. Every tattoo was somebody getting fucked in the ass. Pocatello, Idaho had a really crazy thing where they built an airport over the sewage plant. So when it rained, the sewage kind of came to the surface. So there was tons of flies. It was just, I have so many wacky stories from that tour and then this is me just like, is this something that happens every time? Because this is my first time on the road, and I'm like, does this happen to everybody? Because this is the most bizarre shit ever, But it was, that was like, that tour was just so insane. And like, by the time it was really funny too. I didn't eat junk food back then. And so I would only eat catering and only when catering was available, et cetera, et cetera. So, but the whole time was me carrying boxes of cassettes to and from our bus to my friend's booth and everything, so I could give them to kids. And so I lost about 50 pounds on tour. And so when my girlfriend at the time saw me at Ozfest in Los Angeles, I didn't know what I looked like. And she was like, and so I had all these pictures and these pictures actually ended up getting lost. And then when I moved to LA, I found them and I didn't know what I looked like. I literally looked like a burnt matchstick. I was just thin and brown with like my head shaved, except for like when it grew in a little bit, and I was dark and scrawny. It was just, I was like, I look like a burnt matchstick. But it was such a crazy, and it was funny too. After I got back, I went and saw a band called Linkin Park at the Roxy in LA, and people were like, this is going to be the biggest thing in the world. And I was like, I've been on tour with this all summer. Like, what's the big deal? And then they fucking blew up out of nowhere. I was like, oh, all right, guess so. But yeah, I mean, those Roadrunner years were just, they were so chaotic and so much fun, but so chaotic, but so much fun, but so chaotic, you know. And I wouldn't seriously, it's like I wouldn't trade it for anything, because it, you know, it really was. It was like working at my favorite place, you know, and with all my favorite people. And I loved everyone that worked there. And, you know, I love that I'm still friends with all of them for the most part, you know. I'm going to see a bunch of them. I'm going to see Abramson actually next week. The week after, when I fly to New York. You know, so it's like I get to see a bunch of the people I used to work with, and it's always just fun, you know. Out here in LA, we actually, me and some of the LA people, we get together and we just have a little LA office, like Roadrunner office kind of get together. And it's like, yeah, and it's like this 20 years later, you know, like we still are just like, nah, like we fucking love each other to death, you know. So it is, man. It really is an incredible thing, an incredible experience. And I do wish there are things, again, that I wish I could have been there for. I wish I could have been there for, you know, seeing Stone Sour really get big, and seeing Killswitch really get big, and see Trivium, you know, pave this path. I remember when Trivium were just kids in Florida, you know, and then when Roadrunner signed him, I was like, really? But then it's like, I remember seeing them and being like, holy shit, you know. So just all of these bands really just, there were some of those bands where I'm just like, fuck, man, that would have been really a really cool thing to be a part of. But, you know, I got to work Iowa. I got to work the first Slipknot, you know, the second half of the first Slipknot record. You know, I got to work Fear Factory. I got to work so many awesome bands, and even bands that didn't do well, like Anyone and Downer. You know, that was the thing about Roadrunner, was that for every one Roadrunner band, you had like 20 or 30 Century Media bands. You know, and that's what I always loved about Roadrunner, was almost like we were always able to cut through all the chaff and find that one diamond in the rough, you know, and Monty was fucking brilliant at that, even though he did sign some duds, but he really could find, like, I mean, you know, that Slipknot, you know, like that Slipknot magic, or, you know, like just some of that magic that he really brought in, you know, that we had there, you know, even the ones that didn't do good, like Workhorse Movement and stuff. It's like, they were phenomenal. If you want to hear a really amazing band, listen to Cinch.
Yep.
Oh my God, that they opened for Stone Sour on I can't remember if it was Stone Sour's first tour, but dude, in my opinion, that band should have been like the next Pearl Jam. They were fucking amazing. The dude had an incredible voice, and that's one of those things where I'm like, fuck, man, that record should have done so well.
Yeah.
But again, it was really fun, and it's always great to see, you know, see some of these bands still, you know, like when I did 70,000 Tons, it's like I got to tell the guys in Sepultura my dad's cocaine story, you know, and it's like that still like makes me laugh, you know. But yeah, it's
a special place. It's I'm glad you're sharing all this, because I know why I like it as a fan, as the dude who was at the front row and Trivium played leads for the first time. It's like, you know, there's something special there. It's interesting because, like, I realized that Roadrunner was something special when I looked at the back of Constitution of Treason, and realized it was a Century Media record. And I was like, oh, I thought, I'm used to seeing a little red thing on this kind of sound. You know what I mean?
That was the one thing, you know, you talk about regrets. One of the things that I do regret also was that I didn't do enough with my European counterparts. I felt like if I had gotten to fly to Europe and really meet with the UK staff and meet with the Germany staff and all of that, I think that would have been made for a much more cohesive scenario. And that's one of the things. I mean, I love the staff that was in the UK, Kirsten Sprinks and you know, everybody that was there. But it was like, that's what I really regret, was that I never got to make it to England to talk to them and really kind of sit down and go like, okay, cool. What are you guys doing? What are we doing? You know, you guys got CD samplers when we were still fucking using cassettes, you know, like, okay, why? You know, how can we bridge this gap? And those were the kinds of things that I really was, you know, that's one of the things I kind of regret, was just not being able to talk to the people in Australia, not really be able to talk to the people in Japan and see what see how we were different, see how we were the same, and see what we could do together that could have really kind of made it even more cohesive.
Impact.
You know,
well, more of an impact. Yeah, man. I'll track them down. We'll do a conference. We'll do like a 4-way.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, Michelle
man.
Kerr. Sorry, I was trying to remember her name. Michelle Kerr. Sorry, Michelle, if you're seeing this, I apologize. I forgot. Also 2-3 o'clock in the morning. So, but yeah, but I mean, so that's sort of my Roadrunner story. Like I said, I got a million tour stories and bullshit like that are just ridiculous, but that's definitely for another time.
Dude, I appreciate you sharing your, within 36 hours of me contacting you. I appreciate you sharing with me.
You wanted to talk to me about Star Wars, metal, and Roadrunner. I'm like, yeah, who cares what fucking time it is? I'm okay. Like, this is my kind of thing. You know, if anything, I'm gonna be all buzzing now. I'm gonna be like, fuck, I won't be able to go to sleep now. I'm gonna be like, fuck, man. Well, thank you again, man. You have yourself a wonderful day, and I am going to sleep.
Right, I'll catch you in a bit, bro.
All right, take care, buddy.